Are we live?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the AV Experience. I'm Ryan, joined as always by Jonathan. Jonathan, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well, Ryan. Good to see you.
It's nice to be back. We're not joined by Michael today because Michael is out with his family. His daughter has a big-time cheer competition. So wish them well. I heard that he got food poisoning yesterday, so hopefully he's mending well. Him and his wife, they went out for some steakhouse, Kobe Steakhouse, and then it didn't end well. But we had that in Spain when I was at ISE, so maybe it's not food poisoning. It's just a stomach bug that we thought was food poisoning. But, you know, it's easy to mistake food poisoning when you have things coming out of both ends. So, too much?
Oh, man.
Okay. So what did you guys talk about last week? I wasn't here. I haven't been here in a couple weeks. So what have I missed?
What was the topic last week? I got to web search it real quick. I don't remember what it was. Someone in the comments probably remembers. We really just did mostly questions last week. We only had like an hour stream or something. It wasn't very long.
Was it anything interesting?
Mostly just questions.
Okay. Well, that's what we're doing this week because Michael's not here and I'm not organized enough to prepare a topic. So
you had a busy week, I think.
I did. I don't even remember what. Well, I was catching up. So the reason I missed last week was I was at ISE in Spain, which is like the international version of CEDIA. It's, for anybody that doesn't know, it's bigger than CEDIA. CEDIA is like one hall. So picture a big warehouse. That's CEDIA. Now take ISE and take that one hall and multiply it times 8. And that's CEDIA. So there were almost 100,000 people at ISE. It's 4 days long instead of 3. And it's just big. But the reason it's so big is because it's not just residential AV and home theater. It's also things like pro AV or pro audio, pro video, drones, signage. I mean, there's a lot more to it than what CEDIA brings in. CEDIA is really focused on the residential AV sector, and ISE is just a lot bigger. But it was a good time. It was a good time. Saw some cool stuff when I had some time to get away. What was some of the coolest stuff that we saw?
Were you there under your Mad VR hat?
Yes.
So and did you partner with anyone as a booth? Were you there with
we were there with Screen Research and ADIO. We shared a booth with them. We had Mad VR's also in the Trinov booth. So Trinov, Officina, Crix, Kaleidoscape, Barcode, that booth. We had a unit over in the JBL synthesis room. We had, is that all? And then we had one in L Acoustics. So we had, including us and the one in the Screen Research stuff, there were 5 out on the floor. Speaking of Screen Research, they demoed this really cool screen using the Mad VR because for anybody that doesn't know, Mad VR has the ability to look at and identify what the aspect ratio is dynamically. So we can see what the aspect ratio is, but then we can forward that onto control systems. So ADIO and Screen Research took this and actually created an automatic masking system that is infinitely variable. So it doesn't matter what the aspect of the content is, it will automatically change. And their masking is super fast. So it's not fast enough to keep up with like multiple aspect ratios in content, but it's not like you're having to wait for it to slowly come down. It's actually pretty quick as it comes down. And it just means that the customer doesn't have to do anything. So that was super cool. Trinov demoed a new addition to their waveforming. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know that I can, and I don't want to get anybody angry at me. So
if it was publicly talked about, you can't.
But I don't know if they mentioned anything about it because I wasn't down there. All I will say is last year they had some problems in their booth with low frequencies. This year it was much better. I won't say it was like, Jonathan, what you and I would expect from low frequency with manual calibration and stuff, but for an auto EQ, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. They made some changes and it was pretty good. So really liked that. Crix demoed some new dual opposed 18-inch subwoofers. So supposedly, and I didn't see any measurements, but the room was flat down to 8 hertz. So I didn't see measurements, but there was
Why
energy
not
in
just
that
say it's
room.
flat down to 3 hertz if it's not
Well, I mean,
measurements? I
your
mean,
your clothing was going like this and stuff. So
sure.
there was some energy in that room. So I don't necessarily doubt it, but without the measurements and stuff, I don't know at what dB that was measurement was taken, and I don't know if the F3 was falling off or what was going
What
on.
size room was it? Like hotel size rooms or
So their
apartment
room
size?
that they normally do, Officina creates a standalone room, and it's like 20 feet wide by probably 40 feet long with
Big
15-foot ceiling.
room.
It's a big room. Like there were a lot of subs in that room. There was a lot of energy in that room.
So a lot of dual opposed 18s, you're saying?
Yes, yes, front and rear. And it sounded much better than it did at ISC last year. So I was happy. Then I went over to the Ascendo booth. They showcased a new 16-inch sub that I'm very excited for. The cone area is actually about 17 inches. So it's a sealed, quote unquote, 16. But they had them. You remember the images that came out of CEDIA last year or CES or Expo? I don't remember where it was, but Klipsch was showcasing all of their new subwoofers. And they had like the wall of subs.
Yes.
They didn't have them on.
Some of them weren't on, correct?
Ascendo had them on, and it was like getting hit in the face with a pressure wave. It was super cool because it was 15 16-inch subs, and just like the Trinov room, there was some output, but it was very concise output. So it was cool. I think that's going to be super cool. Then they demoed what they're calling the Mule, which is a 10-inch like add-on sub. I don't know quite how to describe it other than that, but the purpose of it is you put it with your surround channels. So it's a dedicated smaller sub that goes with surround channels to increase their low-end frequency response.
Directional bass talk.
Yeah, so that was cool. He was looking at it. Jeffrey looks at it as, does he think it's necessary? No, but for those that think it is, it's a cool addition, right? So
I think that here's something we talked about today when I was over at Sheldon's with Tim. The mind is so powerful with stuff like that it can so easily enter in the land of placebo. You know, from my own testing with directional bass, how I feel about it. But that said, your brain can think that it's completely legitimate until you do blind testing with it. And if your brain thinks it's legitimate and you're enjoying it and your satisfaction is increased because of it, do you argue against it, or do you just
placebo is a powerful thing?
Yeah, do you hopefully just know the truth and let that be that, Like if someone's getting more enjoyment out of it, even if they can't detect in a blind test because they think that's better. I'll give you a specific example. When I was over at Sheldon's, he doesn't have directional bass enabled, even though he has 4 stacks of 4 subwoofers in the corners. He has them all on standard LFE.
Wait. Before we go any further with Sheldon's, let's talk about what Sheldon's setup is right now. Because you told me before the show started, he's made another further change than what I knew.
Sure. So the last time you and I were over there, he had 8 18s. The near field was an 18, and he has like 20 or 25 JBL 12s underneath for hover easy and direct attacks subs. So he's got a lot of firepower. Since then, one of the only places I've been over where the scalp on your hair on your scalp moves, the gel in your eyes, all that kind of stuff.
I'm just imagining like my head going like this in his room.
Right. Well, since then he's added 8 more 18s, so he's got 4 in each stack. So 16 18s. He put a 24-inch behind his seat instead of an 18,
because the tactile in his room wasn't enough already.
Right. He got rid of the Krausens, which I think you knew about because you guys might have made some sort of trade in the background. But he's got multiple hover easies under each chair, and he's got multiple direct attach bosses on some of the chairs. So that's like where you stick a 12-inch driver to the back of the chair, and basically it's open baffle, but you nail it in there. So yeah, tactile and spades. And he and I was telling Ryan right before the show, we have a little bit of disagreement on how much tactile is subjectively pleasurable.
I'm with you on this one.
Sheldon likes it much hotter than us. So like he asked me to come over today to kind of set a baseline for kind of normal, and then he'll have his settings. So I kept like dialing it all the way back, and even at the end of the day, I kept dialing it down, and it was always still too hot, like still a little bit too hot for my preferences.
I
Everyone's
like how he thinks that you're normal. Like, in what way are we normal? But he's like using you for a level of normalcy that just shows how far out he is in the tactile stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, even at the end of the night, as I was leaving, I was like, I probably still want to take 2 or 3 dB off, but I'd been saying that all day. I was over there for about 6 hours, and every time I'd say 2 or 3 dB less, I'd want 2 or 3 dB less on top of that as we went.
Hold on. Remember the last time we were there, he was talking about how the tactile was making it so he couldn't go to sleep.
That's when his chair was bouncing around like this. It doesn't do that anymore because we've dialed it back.
So
it has the
he dialed
capability.
it back
I mean,
from that.
literally, he's on Hubby Easy with inner tubes, right?
Oh.
The drivers are underneath his chair, firing into inner tubes that make the chairs bounce. And if you remember seeing the Kansas City video at the beginning, it shows him and Michael bouncing up and down on that chair, just like I just demonstrated. It's wild. It has so much capability.
Well, he probably can't go to sleep at that point because his brain's like, we're going to World War III. I got to stay up. I can't go to sleep. If I go to sleep, something bad's going to happen.
It's probably like driving a motorcycle all the way to Sturgis, and like you can't fall asleep after that kind of ride. It's that kind of thing.
Man.
Anyway, by the end of the night, we still needed to turn it down a little bit. In my opinion, I left him with those instructions. Like, it's still a little bit hot, but it's more to my taste. And he's like, I got to turn this up. That's the back and forth we had today. So here's where I was going with this story from the beginning. We were listening to that turn off bass. Do you remember that thing where there's like the turn off electronics and they're playing bass drums and they're moving around the room? That's a directional bass track, for instance. Like, that's one I could tell in my room that was directional.
It's a great one.
At any rate, he doesn't have any directional bass on. And I'm sitting in there. I know the transducers aren't directional. They're just getting standard LFE. But the surround channels in the room make that bass and even the feel from the tactile transducers lead. So I was telling Sheldon, I was like, man, I know your transducers are just getting all the same signal, but I would swear to you that it feels like the transducer, the way they're firing is moving with the speakers. So it's just like, that's the placebo thing I was talking about. So it's coming full circle. It's like, I guess you could probably sell something in good conscience, even though it probably is not really audible in a blind test, because our brain doesn't decipher it right and thinks it's working when it's not really audible in a blind test, but your brain will make it work.
Well, I think it's working. It's just there's so much going on that we can't comprehend what is happening. I think that's
fair. It physically works. Like I talked about when I had it in my room, you could go back and touch the driver and feel it was moving more, but the blind test didn't prove out that you could detect that it was happening.
Well, we talked about this when you brought this up, that it was even when we were trying to decipher the difference between room EQs. When we were doing full demos, it gets way more difficult to identify
more channels.
What's going on than it is in two channel. So
right,
it's just becomes overwhelming, in my opinion. I can't believe he added a near field 24. I can't talk. I mean, You're
gonna have a near field 50. Right.
I can't talk.
Get out of here.
I can't talk. No, can't talk. So Sheldon's just something else. Something else.
Yeah, well, you guys at M-Wave are in for a treat, and he can just make it insane. So
good.
Now he has a sane setting, perhaps, if my tastes are sane, and an insane setting not to my taste.
So somebody said, Azure Oval said it was more of a mid bass, not for low frequency. And he's absolutely right. So the kick sub or the mule, it's not for like 20 hertz. I mean, it's meant for mid bass reinforcement. So 50 and above, 40 and above, somewhere in there to allow for the speaker to get into, depending on your speaker, more low end extension. So that's what this is designed for. And I think it's just a cool tool to have in the toolbox because something like this really doesn't exist. It's super small. The depth isn't very deep. So it's a super shallow cabinet and it's not big. So it's very flexible. It's going to be a cool product to have available. So that's awesome. Schmuck asks, did you get to demo the Trinov Crick's Officina Acoustica room? What did you think? Apparently Crick's had some new subs there. It was more wet to your liking. So we talked about this a little bit at the show start. I did get to hear it. There was a lot more energy in that room than there was last year at ISE. Last year at ISE, I felt like it was dry, for lack of a better
Dry
explanation.
bass.
Dry bass. It was very mid bass heavy. It didn't extend down really low. They fixed that. Now, I don't think it's to the level of like what Jonathan and I expect out of low frequency and how tight things can be. But for room EQ, it was very good. For room EQ, they had a lot of low end extension. I mean, my close were going like this in a 20 by 40 by 15-foot room. Now it could that's my guesstimation as how big this room was, but it's not small. And it's not a very sealed room because it's an officina room, so they've sealed it as well as they can, but there's no concrete, there's no like double stacked drywall or OSB that's creating mass to keep things in or the low frequency in. So there was a lot of leakage. So to be able to have that amount of energy in there, that was respectable. I mean, it was a lot better than last year. Trinov has also done some stuff with their room EQ. I don't know that I'm allowed to talk about what it is or what it's doing because I wasn't there for that, but I will say that it's helped low frequency. So that's thumbs up.
You got a question from Paul here. I'll pop it up there.
So Ascendo are not doing what Rel do with these. They're stacking. What I mean is by having kick subs and infrasonic subs makes you buy more subs. Genuine question. I don't think that's what Ascendo is trying to do. So the kick sub is there as a tool, right? Jeffrey is not saying that it's a necessity. It's more of if you need it in a particular environment or if you want to go down the rabbit hole of directional bass. That's the feeling that I have gotten from the conversations that I've had with him. So I don't think it's them trying to sell more of anything. It's simply the ability to reinforce something if needed, which is awesome because it's super small. And just having a piece of kit that is there to be able to utilize is great. So JTR RS2s means you just buy one sub as an example. Yeah.
Nobody just buys one J2RS2.
No.
Give me an example. Even though it's super capable, it's not a testament to its capability.
How many of us in this chat just go out and be like, I'm going to buy one sub? None of us do that.
And if you do, it's only for like 6 months or a year before you get its partner. That's what I've seen. Anyway.
Or 1 month or a week. And you get it in. It's like, I should have bought two. And then just go buy another one. Yeah, it's like having a drug addiction. We just have subwoofers and they're harder to hide.
Ryan thought he'd just buy two. And by the end, you were up to how many? The ULF 4000s?
5? But I'm not even the worst. I wasn't even the worst. I mean, how many does
newbies have 7 or 8 now at this point?
And then Mark has
about the same, 7? I think. I don't remember exactly.
You can't laugh at me.
No, it's par for the course. That's the way it works.
But then I can't talk because I'm going to have 11 subs in my new room. So can't go down that. Can't talk badly about people because I'm just as bad. Just as bad. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything else and I am starring your guys' questions, so don't feel like we're not answering them. I'm just trying to answer, or we're trying to answer things that are relevant as we see them come in. So, Jonathan, did you do anything else aside go from in the AV space?
We did a little. You mean at Sheldon's? Yeah, we did a little Trinoff versus no Trinoff. I'm sorry, Dirac versus no Dirac testing because he's got the new. Well, you sold it to him, the
6800.
6800.
Yeah.
Actually, so there was some back and forth where we preferred on or off one way or the other. But in some cases, like especially your Johnny Cash, what's the name of that Sound of Silence song?
Mm-hmm.
I like Dirac better on with it.
Really?
Yeah. It just like in my room, it changes the soundstage, it changes the imaging.
Mm-hmm.
We were all thinking it added more reverb to the room, which I don't know if that's something they're intentionally doing, which feels like a little bit of a cheat if they are, or if it's just the frequency response changes. But the surrounds, he very carefully set up, and I watched him do it, set up all the channels with Dirac off and Dirac on to 75 dB, so the channels were level matched.
Mm-hmm.
But Dirac, when it's on in his room, was making the surrounds come more alive, like on that Atmos song. It sounded like the room was larger. It sounded like there was more reverb in it, notably. And then here, this is the kind of stuff that we ran into in our testing in my room. The very next song we were playing, it was the reverse. With Dirac off, the room sounded larger and the soundstage sounded bigger. So it's like it's hard. It's hard for me to like pick a winner when it's back and forth. I would say in his room, it was like 50% of the time I liked it on and 50% of the time I locked it off. And in my room, I preferred it off more than on. So, take that with a grain of salt, whatever. But now that's a couple different rooms I've spent some time with Dirac in.
So when my room is done, Matt from Storm is going to come out, and we're going to spend a lot of time doing these analyzations about what is different, but actually digging into the nitty gritty of what is actually changing through measurements. So I'm really interested to see how this is all playing out. I have a feeling it has a lot to do with phasing, because that's a big part of what room EQ is doing that a lot of times manual EQs don't. So I wonder if with the sound staging changing and stuff that it's phasing, doing things. But back to what we were talking about previously. So Joey, welcome Joey. He says Chernoff has publicly disclosed their updated waveform and pressurization updates for beta testers and select dealers. All right, so let's talk about it. I'll give you a brief synopsis about what I understand is happening. Now, Chernoff can very well correct me because I don't know if I'm 100% correct, but what they've done is they have added this, what they're calling pressurization. And at a certain frequency, and I don't know what the frequency is that they had it set to in Spain, they change from waveforming to pressurization. So instead of there being like this push-pull effect where the subs are supporting each other to flatten out the frequency response, it becomes more of a everything on to pressurize the room. So they've changed how the low frequency is being reinforced, and it made a big difference because they stopped room EQ from getting in there and doing what it was doing and causing it to go and fall off a cliff. So the pressurization thing was awesome. It's still not to where I would like to see it, but for room EQ, as I've said a couple times, it was very good. Very good.
So about this pressurization subject, I want to talk about that for a second, Ryan. I'm changed my subs again now. I've got them in like a little L shape on both sides of the screen. So there's 1 on the bottom and 3 on the top, and just playing with stuff, right? For like a month, maybe ish, I had the subs stacked 4 high on either side of the screen. And you're talking about like the pressurization thing, and we talked about it briefly on a podcast, and I've talked about it a little bit with Michael, but you weren't on here with one of the nights we talked about it. There's that whole idea, and you can see it in some of the videos on YouTube where they have like a wall of subs in a semi truck or something, and it makes a wave of bass. And the wave of bass is so strong it can like do hair tricks outside, like we've seen that kind of stuff, right? So the wave of bass is a real principle, because if you go to a concert and there's that many subs, there's easily that many subs at concerts. It doesn't do hair tricks on people, right? Because they're not placed as a wall at that type of venue. So there is something to that. Now, here's my observation, and what I think is kind of, it's a casual observation. It's immature, but it's probably secure enough for that I don't think I'm going to keep my subs like that, probably. Over the course of a month, dialing into the levels that I like on the SPL meter, and just by feel, and having had my room for as many years as I have, there is more of a pressure wave that comes from this 2 towers being exactly identically distant from you and hitting you at the exact same time MLP, even to the point where you feel it in your ears. That old adage, like it felt like I was underwater, like swimming to the deep end of the pool. It can recreate that pressure wave, that feel, and I don't like it.
You don't like it?
I don't like it. At first I was like, wow, this is cool. It's so impressive because it's so much like a stronger feel. But I want you to think about this for a minute. Do you like that feeling when you go swimming in the deep end of the pool and your ears feel pressure? I don't. And so over the course of a month, I'm like, this isn't very comfortable listening like this, because it's too much. Like it's too much for me. Now, I don't know if everyone would feel that same way, or if that's just me being a little wuss, but I'd really have to dial my subs back quite a bit more than what I normally have them at, because of that feeling. So that's again casual, immature. I haven't spent a whole lot of hours like really dialing him in with like all the time I would normally do if I was going to leave him there. It's just kind of a place and let Odyssey run, turn Odyssey on and off, play with it back and forth, change the levels, do measurements. My measurements don't look bad. I have a little bit of a bump from 30 to 40 hertz that I wouldn't normally have in my normal config, but it's not bad. Any rate,
Are you getting soft in your old age?
yeah, that feeling I don't like, and so I found myself over the course of a month. At first thinking this is great, and towards the end of the month here, that's why I moved him this yesterday. I was thinking like, I don't enjoy music as much. It's not as comfortable to listen to it. It's sort of almost uncomfortable to listen to it. So there you go.
Was it just on
One
your
man's
ears,
opinion.
or could you feel the weight on your skin?
It's more on my ears. You can feel it more tactically. Like at the same volumes, your shirt flutters more. You feel more like impact. Not so. I was trying to tell this to Michael last time. It's a little bit different. I have way more tactile with near field subs than what I'm getting up here. But with the normal subs up front versus these up front, it's a big difference in favor of this. So if I turn off the near field tactile, this has more of like a clean wave of energy that's hitting
Like
you.
a concussive hit?
Yes, like
Yeah.
like if you're playing something from Kraftwerks or something with an impactful, like strong little synth drum, it hits you hard.
I bet you could fix that by just changing the phasing slightly or changing the delay slightly and getting them a little bit out, and you'd probably like a little bit more.
That very well might be true. I mean, that's why I say it's kind of a casual, immature opinion, but it is an observation, and it's not a short. Like I didn't just do it for a day. I've had them in there for a month, and I listen to music almost every day, and so like I have some time in the corner with them. I am ready to go back to my normal arrangement or try a different arrangement, which is why I just switched it to L. I don't like the way this looks. It's not going to stay on looks alone, but on both sides of this, it's just flanking with like an L shape. So I don't know. It's just something you were talking about pressure waves. That's casual observation.
I wonder what your decay times are in your room.
I've measured them before with an RTA 60 on Omni mic. I was just looking that up today. I think it was like 278 in my room with an RT60, if I remember correctly, milliseconds. Doesn't really mean a whole lot to me, actually. I don't know what good or bad is really, but that's what mine measured with Omni mic as I did it a couple years ago to calculate my Schroeder frequency, and that's one of the measurements you have to have. So that's what it was. I'll verify that right now because I think that's what it was. And that was with my normal 5 subwoofers and a semicircle up front and 3 near field all
Paul's
playing.
calling you out. He says he's made everyone spend hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars and now wants Bose.
No, I don't want Bose, and you don't either. I have a funny story to tell you about Bose. One of the guys that's into this, like we are, measured his Bose system, and I'd have to find that graphic. Maybe while we're slowing down here a little bit later, I'll try to pull it up. But he had an Omni mic. He measured the frequency response plot, and that thing looked like, on the subwoofer side, looked like this.
Oh no.
Huge, because it's not like it's a little tiny driver inside that complicated box with all the different band pass functionality, and it's not a smooth sound on the mic. So that's kind of interesting.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Did I see anything else at ISC before we go into some other stuff? I mean, I saw a bunch of stuff. I didn't really get to spend time with a lot of things because I was there with a vendor or as a vendor. Nothing else that really caught my fancy.
Yeah, 278 milliseconds for what it's worth. Just closing that loop.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if that's good or bad. I was just using it as a
I don't think
part
it's
of the math
terrible.
formula.
I don't think it's terrible. There were a lot of 21:9 TVs.
What?
Yep.
I didn't even know that was a thing. We were talking
Yep.
about that last week, and Ryan and I hadn't even, or Michael and I hadn't even seen one.
21:9.
Is that a European thing? They're not
TCL.
here, are
No,
they?
they're new. TCL had a bunch of them. Big
That's
ones.
super interesting because we heard some comments last week, people saying they would be more interested in TV if it offered that format.
They're coming. Maybe not to the States,
cool.
but they were there. Many 100-inch plus 21:9 TVs.
So 16:9 content, you just get black bars on left and right. It gets much smaller.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that spells the death of ultra short throws? Because I do.
We talked about that a little bit last week too. No, I don't think projectors are going away.
No, not projectors, but ultra short throws.
Sure. How big were these TCL TVs? Are they huge ones? Or like 55, 65 to start?
105.
Oh, giant. So 105 and a 235 to 1 ratio is what, like 80 or something maybe? Or I don't even know without doing the math, but it's a smaller 16:9.
But not unsubstantial.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's still a big 16:9 image.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger than my 77 that I've got.
Yeah, that's cool. How'd they actually look? Did you get to see them?
So this is my feeling with them, is that if you're used to looking at like an OLED TV, and this isn't a knock on TCL or Hisense or anything, but then you go look at one of those, it's not great. But that's the change off, right? You're getting big TVs for not a lot of money. And if you compare that to like an LG 97-inch OLED at $25,000, it's a different ball game. So it's, Super Bowl TVs or living rooms or people that aren't used to looking at OLEDs and stuff. Yeah, they're probably fine. But you can see the blooming, you can see all of that stuff on them, and it ain't for me.
OLEDs do kind of spoil you, man.
They do.
Really do.
They do. And with them getting brighter and brighter and brighter, and what supposedly is coming with like the LG G4 and stuff, the brightness is coming.
Okay, so this question was asked the other week, and Michael said he's not switching to a TV for the foreseeable future. Like, he's just not. At what size TV would you switch to? At what size image would you switch from projector to TV?
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't ever either.
No.
I would.
I don't know what I would do with my speakers.
I'd figure it out. Like, I am of the bandwagon at this point after having an OLED for a year. I love it for gaming. It's just such a beautiful picture. No projector that I've ever seen can compete. Not even close. So you get me a 120-inch OLED. I said that's the size, maybe even 115. If you can get a 115-inch OLED, I'm switching, and I'll figure out the speakers because the video quality is so much better. And Michael was just like, no, I'm not switching because I want my acoustic transparent screen. I'm not dropping that. Projectors are good enough. That was his opinion.
So I'd have to play with it, I guess. If I could get away with a Phantom Center, maybe. But I use MySpace a lot more for 2-channel and stuff. So compromising on the audio, I just don't know that I could do it.
But if you use 2-channel, that's more of a reason that you could compromise because you don't even need a center channel 2-channel.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. I'd have to figure it out. I'd have to evaluate that when they get that big. But so then the other problem that I run into is what happens when you want to upgrade?
Same thing that happens with a projector. You walk it out the back door.
That makes it sound like you're going to put it out of its misery when you walk it out the back door. It's been a good life, little projector. It's time to go. No. Like it's easy to ship a projector or something if I'm sending it on to a second home or resell it or whatever. But doing that for a TV, you kind of feel like stuck with it.
I don't think you're stuck with it. There's a million TVs on Facebook Marketplace or anything else.
Yeah,
you sell it, you probably take a hit, but you're going to take a hit on that projector too.
I guess.
How much is a $25,000 JVC worth in 3 years? 8 or 9?
I guess that's true.
Absolutely, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ascendo does have the director speaker that's designed for purposes like this for direct view LED walls and stuff. I don't know. I'm unknown. I said that I wouldn't change, but having an OLED picture quality is pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, as long as I could have my 2-channel, that's the biggest thing. I got to be able to have my 2-channel for the music. So it's not even close how much I use that space for 2-channel as opposed to just home theater.
Man, see, that's different for me. I'm almost 100% Dolby Atmos or upmixing. 2-channel, just straight stereo, I'm out. There's not if I can upmix it, it's getting upmixed. I like it so much better upmixed.
What about subs behind a TV? Well, you have your subs in a room, so it's not a big deal. You don't really see that as an issue. Ryan Chirpy brought that up. So, did we miss anything else? No. I'm highlighting questions. I'm just trying to find questions that are pertinent to this. Okay. So, I want to talk about some new things for me. Let's bring this up. Here's the 16-inch sub. Is that big enough for you guys?
No, but it's on my side. Now it's fine.
Zoom in. Is that better?
Yep, that's fine.
Zoom in. Okay. So this is the 16-inch sub. I'm excited for it because Ascendo really doesn't have anything in this price bracket. It's not overtly large, which is super nice, but it is also not overtly light. It weighs over 100 pounds. So I'm really excited for this thing to enter production. Yeah, I was really happy with how it performed at ISE, but there were 15 of them in an array. So I didn't get to experience just one, but the 15 was super cool. It had a amazing experience. I got that experience that Jonathan doesn't like of the concussive force hitting you in the face. Yeah, that was every bit.
Correction. I liked it at first. It wears on you. It does. It does. But you're right. You could probably just set the distances slightly different and kill it. But then you lose the advantage of having it. I mean, at that point, why are you having it?
I don't know.
Because it looks cool. It's not doing what it's supposed to do.
Well, you said you don't like it. I don't know. So John asks how much this sub is. We don't know yet. It hasn't released yet. So it's coming very, very soon. And I'm very excited about it. But we don't know how much it is. So it'll be awesome. Because it was awesome at ISE. Other thing that's super cool. This remote. So I have been in the search for a remote. And I think I may have finally found one. The only problem is it's not direct to consumer.
That looks like a hemorrhoid cushion. What is that thing?
Oh my God.
Is that like a little Apple remote knockoff? Is that little scroll wheel or something?
So it's not a scroll wheel. It's lit as far as I can tell. So this is an LED. It's an LED screen. This is a raised hemorrhoid cushion. It's a raised donut, and it's got a left, right, up, down, center functionality. And then it's got all of these buttons around it. So it's 13 buttons down here that the images can change, and it's changes with the app. But the coolest thing that I like about this is it's got IR and IP built into it, but there's no control system. It's all built into the remote, and it runs on Android. So it'll actually natively run apps on the remote. So if you're running Spotify will run on your remote, and then you just pick the endpoint that you want it to play to, and it'll run on the remote.
Wait a minute. I must have missed something. Well, how is it? It's using Bluetooth or IP technology, or how's Spotify getting from that to yours?
It does Wi-Fi too. What?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you can put Spotify in anything. It just seems like
that's
a new level.
Yeah. How can I explain it?
Like if I have Spotify on my receiver, my various streaming sticks.
I'm not saying that you would need it.
Why do I need it?
I'm not saying that you would need it, but and I'm not limiting it to just Spotify. Any app would run on it. So like Kaleidoscape, I can run the Kaleidoscape app on the phone and interact like I would with it on my phone, because a lot of times the phone apps are a better experience than a lot of what the control system remotes are able to deliver. So you get all of the responsiveness from the artwork. So I can scroll through things. I can control things. I don't have one of these remotes yet. I've just seen them. Potentially buy things on the remote. It's just a more all-inclusive experience. And The reason I bring this up is because I've been looking for a remote. I've used a bunch of IP control systems. I've used a bunch of these remotes. Most of them just suck, right? So what can you do? It's not cheap, but none of these remotes are cheap, unfortunately. So not for everybody.
So here's the question and the hurdle they have, right? There's like you said, there's a million different results. Michael's talked about this in the past with these different companies that are trying this, but the software and interfacing with these different products is kind of like the kicker, right? That's why Harmony is still so popular, even after it's been decommissioned for 5 years or whatever it is at this point. You know, people are holding on to them with their dying breath because no one else has replicated that. So is this like what's the pedigree of this company to think that they've got something different but kind of so cool physical?
From what I understand, the guys that created this remote were the largest Crestron dealers in the world. They're from EU, so they understand how remotes function, but they also understand why a lot of these remotes suck. Now, people are saying, "Oh, $1,200 is ridiculous." Well, yes, it is for a remote, but if you then go look at how much IP control system remotes cost,
a lot.
This is way less than an IP control system. So it's a lot. Not saying it's for everybody, but in comparison to what it's competing against, I have a good I'm hopeful about this one. So we'll see. I have a couple on the way. They should be shipping here in the next month or so. I'm hopeful, I guess. Jury's still out, but I am hopeful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Looks nice. Plays the part.
Yeah. So we'll see if it holds up when it comes in, but I am very excited about that one. Anything else? Updates about my room, because we haven't talked about that in a while. So big news today that came out about my room is that my room is no longer the Void. It is the Mad VR Experience Center Midwest. So Mad VR has come out and officially sponsored the room. So now my room is no longer just a showroom. It is now a vendor space. So people were wondering, like, why are you running Storm and Tronov at the same time? Well, the reason is because we wanted to create a more flexible environment around the space so that it could be used for multiple situations and by multiple vendors and by multiple dealers and by multiple people wanting to come in and see things. So we just wanted to create a new, very flexible space that nobody had really done before. So we want to be able to run, and we are running, multiple projectors, multiple processors, multiple sources. Eventually, I'd like to run multiple speakers simultaneously, and the room's been designed to be able to do that because I can get behind all of the walls and stuff. So that's the big news that's come out today. As far as where the room stands right now, all the OSB's in. So 8,000 pounds of OSB, that's done. I'm glad we don't have to move any more plywood. That was not fun carrying 80-pound sheets of plywood. You're like, oh, 80 pounds isn't that bad. And then it gets into this awkward 8 by 4 foot sections, and it's just awful. So I'm glad that's done. Tomorrow we're cleaning up a lot of the sawdust because the dust has taken over my basement. We've started moving racks. There'll be 2 racks to run the theater back in the back storage area. And now I'm really just waiting for things to come in. Orchestrating, got the final renders from Officina for the space while I was at ISC, approved those. So we're just now waiting for things to come in and finish design stuff and get things manufactured, and hopefully we'll be ready to rock and roll by M-Wave. That's about all the new news I think I've got now. Oh, the Duratex arrived because I'm painting the whole thing in Duratex.
What?
Yeah.
All the OSBs getting painted in Duratex?
Yes. I don't know what's wrong with me.
That ought to be an interesting smell for about the next month.
Well, yeah, Duratex, because
it's really strong smell compared to other paints.
So we're gonna block it off, but I asked Maurizio from Officina, like, do you think I should paint everything behind all of the Officina stuff? And he said, yeah, because if you see like anything or through the screen, because I want to be able to maximize contrast because it is a woven screen. So having a black area back there, it's just going to be better, and everything being able to spray it all at the same time. So that arrived. I've got to level the floor, which is kind of an unusual thing to say because the room isn't like the Officina stuff doesn't sit on the floor. There's a reveal at the bottom. So if I don't level it, like I'm not leveling it right now.
Room's
if,
cockeyed.
if I don't
Room's cockeyed.
if I don't level it, you'll see it in the reveal. So if the room's not level, the room could be like, "Bleep." Well, I just made it level when it went.
So are you doing a new pour of some sort to level it, or how? What are you doing?
So the guy behind me, my rear neighbor, works in concrete, and I said, "Do you know anything or anybody that can do like a self-leveling epoxy?" And he just goes, "Who needs epoxy? I'll bring over my grinder." And I'm like, I've got enough dust. Do we want to do this? And he said, it's got a vacuum and stuff on it. Not that gets everything, but so that's probably next because it's probably best to grind all of that stuff before I paint it.
How do you grind it flat? A laser level or something to identify the high spots?
Yes. He does this for a living, so works for a big concrete company. Runs job sites and stuff. So Juan says a dehumidifier will get the Duratex dried quick and the smell will go quicker. Noted. I have a dehumidifier. Even if it doesn't work, it's going to make me feel better.
3 weeks instead of a month. Yeah.
I kind of wonder how much, if I tape it off, how much the smell will escape. Because that room is remarkably sealed if I put the doors and stuff up. It's kind of eerie when you walk in there. It's a totally different experience when you go in there. And yeah. Youthman's here.
What?
He says, hello from Disney Springs in Orlando. Do you feel better, Michael? Or do you still feel like you're dying? I don't know why I'm waiting.
He's furiously typing. Gotta keep the show on track. Got some nice comments rolling in, Michael.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. He said his daughter, they won the prelims. So I don't know if that was yesterday, if that continues today, but hopefully they continue to do well. Randy asks, projector for the room. So the projector is going to be
crazy.
The Christy Griffin.
Wild.
Yeah. I never thought that I would do that, but I did it.
That will be the first Christy that I've seen. I'm excited.
Hopefully it only lets you down slightly. And you don't look at me and be like, why'd you do this?
The Epson's only 3.5.
The Epson's better. Jonathan's the guy, he would do that too.
I should do it just for fun. The motion in my eyes.
I mean, it's DLP, so you shouldn't, but who knows? Who knows? Anything else? Do we miss anything not pertaining to my room? Just any news? No? I don't think so. Question time?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, you do have a question about the Christie.
Did that just come in? Where?
Yeah, just saying how big is the room? Probably for the cooling question part of it, you know?
Oh. So how big is the room? The room is, I look at it like it can hear me talking about it, but the room's 16 feet wide and about 28 feet long. The Christie has a dedicated duct running to it to evacuate all of the hot air. So, and that ducting dumps into another room to get it out. And the reason I had to do that is because with all the OSB and the green glue sealant, the room is virtually, once all the doors are shut, totally sealed. So for air to get out, that's going to be rough. So it has its own dedicated ducting to be able to get all of that out. And it'll sit in a hush box behind the rear wall in the theater, because what you'll see in the actual theater is only 16, not even 16. It's like 15 feet long and 14 feet wide. And in the front, you've got 6 feet of baffle. In the rear, you've got 8 feet of like acoustics and 50-inch unnecessary subness and a bunch of other stuff. So this projector will sit back there in a huge hush box. And the idea is to put other projectors in there in one big hush box and then have either multiple vents coming into the same ducting or just having one in the hush box to suck all of the hot air out. That's the idea, at least for now. Until
So are we going to talk about the fact that when you go in there to watch a movie, your wife on the outside is like ratcheting the door closed? You know, like the Titan submersible from the Ocean Gate. You're
you'll never get out of here.
Got to keep the base in.
Officina is doing the door, and it's going to have like a lot very similar to what Chirpy's has, where it'll come down and like latch into the flooring, and it's a big ass door. So I hope I'm not in over my head.
You are, but that's cool. You got a lot of help with it too. I mean, that's a lot of moving parts you're doing.
It is. But we've got, started in December, hoping to be done in May. So 6 months. Chirpy's only been working on his forever. How long has Chirpy been working on his?
What did he start? Maybe a year ago or something, probably.
Oh, is that
6 months ago? Yeah.
Oh.
He worked on the outer home theater and he worked on the rest of the house. But his actual home theater, maybe a year at this point, by the digging and all that stuff. 8 months, 9 months.
If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough.
There's Ryan, there he is.
Yeah.
Ryan, how long you been working on your room? There's the man to ask.
It's intimidating. Ryan's room's intimidating. I don't think I have the balls to jackhammer on my own floor. No.
That was a lot of work for him.
Yeah.
So how big is the cooler on the Christie Griffin? Because I don't know the different Christie lines. Like is it got are you just feeding a vent to it, or does it have its own separate cooling system? Like one of the Christies has a cooling system.
No. So that's the Eclipse.
Okay.
I hope they do something like that in the future where we can have different cooling systems and we can like have the projector and then have water cooling lines that run off to the radiators, like a PC liquid cooling system or something. It is liquid cooled, the Griffin is, but it's all self-contained, unlike the Eclipse, which has its own separate chiller and a bunch of other stuff. This one, it's all self-contained.
So how, just out of curiosity, do you know like the wattage requirement for obviously the one that has the separate refrigerant coolant with water is huge amount of wattage because that's why they need the water for the heat. But what's the wattage on the model you're buying?
So they actually specify it.
And to put this in perspective for the audience, a normal like JVC or Epson is going to be 200-300 watts, that type of range.
So power, are you looking for power consumption?
Yeah, just out of curiosity. And you think of this in the form of a light bulb, fellas. So if you're like a 200 or 300 watt Epson, it's basically like a 200 or 300 watt halogen work light, like that type of thing.
Typical, because it has 2 ratings.
Echo mode.
2,800 watts.
Wild. That's wild, man.
Max 3,800 watts. That's insane. So it does require 240.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
that's wild. So you got a lot of, really, that's higher than any space heater any of us have ever used in our homes. And you got to get that heat. Forget the people in there. You got to get that heat away from you.
It's a dedicated insulated 10-inch duct for that.
But where's it feeding to? Because that's
it's
like
dumping. It's dumping into my storage room.
That room's going to be 700 degrees.
Well, that's where it's going right now. And then if I need to change it, then I'll change it. But that's where it's going right now.
It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Their face melts off when you open the door to the storage room. I just wanted a DVD.
Hey, Jonathan just looks at me and goes, "Hey, I want to see the racks in the back." I'm like, "Okay." He opens the door and face melts off from opening the door.
Oh man.
Oh, so well, that's where it's going right now. I mean, if it needs
Ryan,
to
I'll put this in
change,
perspective for you. When I was doing crypto mining, I had about 60 graphics cards in there at one point, and that was drawing probably more power than what you're talking, but not that much more. They were in my right next to my HVAC so that it could absorb some of the heat
mhm.
and cycle it around the house, and I had it cycle on and off every 30 minutes, just no matter what it was doing, just to move the heat around the house. The stair steps, going up the top of the stair steps, my wife calls me at work one day, this is wintertime, with the thing cycling. I didn't have to, I had the windows open in the basement to keep the heat at bay, like in the winter, like in that back bedroom, like
Mhm.
open. No matter what. My wife calls me at work and she says, "Jonathan, I'm walking around the house in barefoot and the floor is so hot at the top of the stairs it burns my feet."
Oh my gosh.
So you're talking about the, I mean, less, but still similar power.
Well,
You gotta do something with that heat.
so start my own geothermal company. Welcome to Christie's Power.
I
No,
probably had close to double that because each card was drawing like 150, 160, 170 watts. There were about 60 cards. Not quite double. Maybe you'll have a third less power, but that's a considerable amount of heat. I mean, I'm telling you, the window's open in winter. No exaggeration.
oh yeah. I mean, the nice thing is that since I went with insulated ducting, if it does get too hot, which it may, I can redirect it. And because the entire right now it's dump, the ducting comes down out of the ceiling in the front baffle wall, which is going to be open. So I can grab the duct and redirect it. And I think what we'll do eventually is I will redirect it and then run it out of the house and have it dump out of the
You
house.
probably will
Well,
literally want like a dryer vent to get it
and
like an
that may
external
be
dryer
what
vent.
we do, but this is just where it is right now. So I didn't want to really go down this pathway and then tell my wife I'm going to cut a 10-inch hole in the house for a projector. I mean, imagine having that conversation with your wife. Be like, I'm buying a new projector. I got to cut a 10-inch hole in my house. That's probably not going to go over very well. In steps,
Yeah.
stages. We'll get there. We'll get
Well,
there.
and also the other thing is you wouldn't be necessarily having that on
No.
like all the time. Like the crypto stuff's running 24/7. It just has time to heat saturate. You're turning it on for 2, 3 hours at a time type deal.
Or 8. No. 2 or 3 hours. Max. Max.
Because you'll have, I mean, that heat will have to saturate like the materials that the storage room's made out of, that's concrete, the
Mhm.
rafters. Like it takes a while to heat soak that up to get that heat built. So
Yep. You were
but
heat soaked enough that you were soaking into the steps,
yes.
which is insane.
Well,
Literally
think about
floor is
like 5 or
lava.
6,000 watts, basically a space heater, 5 or 6,000 watts just in like that storage room back there. It was so hot. This is going to be a little embarrassing, but not really. It was just what it was. When I had to go back there and work, uh, to like update, do maintenance, that kind of stuff, I would literally strip off my clothes and just be in there in like shorts or my underwear, working back there and dripping sweat. It was so hot in there
Oh
during the
my
height of it.
gosh.
It was wild. And that was with my HVAC running every 30 minutes, just pump the house. I had to turn it off in the summer, but just to keep that air circulated. It heated my house.
Questions now? Questions.
Yeah, this guy. Now we know why I couldn't find any graphics cards during that time period. I was one guy of many that did that. It was printing money, man. It was nice.
Just blame Jonathan.
Graphics card at the height of it would make like $15 a day. It
That's
doesn't take very long to pay off a, several $100 graphics card at $15 a day. It was nice.
All right. Questions. So, first one, we're working top down. So, first question in, first one out. Finster asks, Ryan, do you anticipate any issues setting up all your subs in your new room given the different sizes? No. I don't think sizes aren't really a problem. It's if you're mixing different
Right.
potentially types of subs and definitely sealed and ported.
Horns, that kind of stuff with different time alignments.
Yeah.
Phase alignments, the
Nightmares.
port or the horn, that all has a phase adjustment. Like it changes the phase of the subwoofer below the port tune. So that's where you run into trouble. All sealed really shouldn't have much trouble.
We'll just have different frequency responses, capabilities, and output capabilities for the subs, but no. It'll be interesting to try and get the crossovers and stuff dialed in, because the 21s are going to be handling mid, and then the 32s and the 50 are handling low stuff. And then I'll probably have different setups so that I can showcase what it's like to turn the 21s off, what it's like to turn the just 21s, or no 32s, or no 50, or 50 only. And so it'll be an experience but that's part of what this room is designed to do, is to showcase what things can do and what things are like. Because if you don't have this stuff, you can't really demo it. So that was a big part of the design process and really why I wanted to build it. Charlie asks, 11.x.4 layout, same power to all channels or more power to the front LCR. Going to be running all in-wall and in-ceiling and AT screen, all 11 speakers the same.
What kind of speakers are we talking about, Charlie?
Charlie, are you still here? If you are.
It's really a matter of distance. It's not like your LCR necessarily need more power unless they're a farther distance, because your SPL drop off at distance is going to be your biggest difference between them, since they're all the same speaker. And if you do the math, there's all kinds of calculator out there, SPL calculators. You put in your speaker sensitivity, you give it the distance, you give it if it's basically on the wall or pulled apart from the wall, like 2 or 3 foot out in front, that kind of stuff. And it tells you how many watts you need for peak dynamic. Remember to leave a little bit for EQ. Like we talked about before, Odyssey could boost by 9 dB. 10 dB as a reference point is 4 times the power. So if your Odyssey can boost 9, you need 4 times what it says if you're going to be EQing up as much as 9 dB. If you're just running those calculators that you're looking at are going to be mostly just for no EQ. So keep all that in mind as you kind of calculate this out. But in its basic form, if you have all the same speakers, you really shouldn't necessarily need more for the front 3. It's not like there's some sort of reason to do that if it has enough already just for what it contains
unless he's intentionally underpowering the surrounds in order to save money.
Monolith 365 IW. Let's look that one up.
That's just their really common in-wall. You want to put it up?
Yeah, I'll put it up. Present. Share screen. Monolith. Here we go. Tell me if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll go to specs here. 2 6.5. A silk soft dome driver for both the mid-range and the tweeter.
9, 8.
Pretty low sensitivity, actually.
And I'm betting it's probably lower than that.
Yeah, they might exaggerate a little bit. So if they exaggerate 3 or 4 dB, you might start. How big is your room? Because that's the next question, right? If you're a real small room, it's probably not going to matter. If you're in a large room, say 3,500 cubic foot or something, you might start to run out of amplifier power. Because keep in mind, like Marantz and Denon, as far as the consumer brands you can go to Best Buy and pick up, they usually have a 70% rated power. So if they say they run 100 watts per channel on the receiver you buy, it really is only putting out about 70 watts per channel when you run 5 or 7 channels. And it goes down from there. So if you run an 11, it'll be down a little bit less than 70%. So use that calculator, figure out how much you need, and then do your estimation from that. And if you don't know a calculator, let me see if I can find one for you, and I'll share my screen again in a second.
He says Buckeye 502s.
That's what he's got for the monolith?
Mm-hmm. He's got more than enough power.
Yeah, he doesn't need more power than that. No way.
No.
That's overkill already.
14 by 16 foot room.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine, man. You do not need more power than that for your front LCR. No way.
You're good.
You have plenty of headroom even. You'd blow those speakers out probably with that amp.
Yeah, and
if you wanted to.
Those amps are pretty good all the way through their power delivery.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You want to star any of the new ones that come in?
Yeah, I'll try to keep an eye on it.
Okay. Paul asks, I only have 16 inches under my screen, and I have two 12-inch Dayton ported in front and one in the back. I'm thinking about a down firing 18. Are there any downsides to down firing? Potentially. There's downside. That same downside could be said about front firing because it just depends on the room and potentially what your flooring's made of. Like if you're firing upstairs and you're firing directly down into a suspended floor, you're not going to get the reflections that you would firing into concrete. So it just depends. What sub are you looking at? Let's keep going and see. If
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to swing around on that conversation and say, if you have a single sealed sub, in my experience, changing the orientation, left, right, circling at 360, it doesn't change the frequency response so much by just spinning the driver around in place. If you move it 6 inches or a foot to the left or right or forward or back, that makes more difference than just spinning the driver or the box in place does.
But he's turning it not
Downfiring
this way. He's turning it this way.
Downfiring still works. I mean, there's a guy, Bosso Bass, famously on ABS Forum, who thought that like a dual pose sub up and down firing was his favorite design. So I don't have any problem with it. I don't think there's any real negative to it per se. There is something to acoustic energy close to the cone. We've talked about that many times on here. So if you're desiring that kind of thing as a near field purpose, the acoustic energy is not going to be hitting you. If it's firing directly down into the floor will be getting more. You'll probably get a little more tactile of the floor potentially. That's really, as far as like far field placement, I don't think it will matter that much really. To Ryan's point, if you got thick carpet with a real thick pad or something, it might absorb a tiny bit, but the wavelengths are so long with subwoofer, it just really shouldn't matter.
Another Paul. Ascendo are not doing what we already answered that one. Finster. Do you guys know anything about the One Audio 18 HT3 subs? Good, bad, etc.
I don't.
I do not either.
I've never even heard of them. Who are those?
No idea.
One Audio 18 HT3. Stereo integrity.
Oh.
I know that doesn't make sense though. The 18 V3 is stereo integrity, but that's not One Audio, so it must be someone different. There's One Audio USA HT3. Okay, I found it here. $619. Excursion is 34 millimeter one way X Max. QTS is 35. No, I've never read any reviews on it. I don't really know. 3-inch coil, 2000 watt power handling. Yeah, sorry, I can't direct you. Just to see if you can find someone that's got some feedback for it on the forums. ABS
or if you can
forum.
demo it somehow.
Yeah.
I missed this super chat. Drew Arredondo says, love what you guys do. Thanks for the dedication to this hobby and community. I never really feel like it's anything extra to do this stuff. I mean, I enjoy this space that it's fun. It's fun to talk about it. My wife doesn't understand that. She's like, why are you such a nerd? But she married me, so maybe she didn't know that, and now she regrets her decision. I don't know. Anything from you, Jonathan, on that? No.
Extra from me, no.
No.
I feel the same way you do. I mean, it's just it's enjoyable. Like it's fun. It's not a chore.
No.
Thank you though. We appreciate your comment.
John asks, drywall finished and building 2 tiers of risers, 3 total seat levels. How much venting is needed for air release from the risers? Is there a rule of thumb? You just built a riser.
You hear all kinds of stuff. You got to fill it with insulation. You got to fill it with sand. That might be placement related. In my measurements in my room, mine's nothing. It's like a big drum. If you want to say that, it's just hollow. It's made of thick boards, 2x4s everywhere. and 4x4 reinforcements for the beams, but I don't notice anything in my room. It's not like it messed up my frequency response or it's measurably bad or different. So measure and see what you come up with. I mean, it may be placement related. Maybe if I had it on the front soundstage, it'd be different or something. But
I
in my
think
room, I haven't noticed a problem.
I think it's more about trying to treat issues in your room, like using it as absorption or a resonator or whatever you're trying to fix that's actually already existing in your room. There's potential there, but I don't know that you should worry about creating potentially any problems. I mean, the lengths of the frequencies, they're just going to go through it. I don't think they're going to care.
Yeah, there are, if you want to get real sciencey with it, it's beyond my skill level. You need an acoustic engineer probably, but you can use a riser to like help remove standing waves and so forth. You know, if you put it in the right place for the
Mhm.
placement of subwoofers and the dimensions of your room and all that kind of stuff, it gets really math heavy and complicated. You can remove resonances, but it doesn't automatically create one. I will say that from experience. It didn't create one in my room that I can
Or
tell.
maybe it did that, but we can't tell. We're not
Not
smart.
at my not at my seating positions when I've mic'd all my seating positions. It's not doing anything in my seating positions in my room. Yeah, look at this. True. Can't Sheldon and Tim both helped me build my riser one Saturday. It was nice.
It's always nice to have help.
Yeah, we got knocked through it real fast that way.
Schmock91 asks, do you think MDF sheeting in place of drywall will assist with sound leakage?
I,
Mm,
I I don't know the answer to that, but I do know this. Mark Seaton of Seaton Sound, who's brilliant in this space, says that basically a single sheet of drywall is almost like transparent to subwoofer waves. The longer, lower frequencies, they just don't care. And I've done some just measurement, just testing in my room. So this baffle wall up here, it's just drywall. I went and played a 5 hertz test tone, and I put my mic on the other side of the drywall just to see if there was any truth to that. It was actually mic tip on this side of the wall, mic tip on that side of the drywall. It was actually a few tenths of a dB louder on the other side of the wall. So at least the lowest frequencies, it's the waves are so long, drywall doesn't present any obstacle. So you want more mass. That's why they do double drywall. That's why they do the MDF, the OSB, all that kind of stuff. The more mass you have, the more resistant it is to kind of help stop that acoustic energy. But when you get down to those low frequencies, you can't really stop them. Uh, I'll be curious how your room pans out in that regard, Ryan. Like if we play a 5 hertz test tone, can't I think my wager is it's getting through. Like no matter what you do, it's getting through. And I don't know what frequency that is where it stops. Again, that goes into that real heavy math stuff. We got to know you got to have a quarter of the acoustic wavelength to basically do much absorption. And a quarter of an 80-foot wave is 20 dang feet. So unless you're doing 20 feet of absorption or deadening type material, you're not really putting much damper on those acoustic
but it'll
waves.
help with high frequencies.
Yes, absolutely. Higher bass frequencies, higher frequencies in general. The higher frequency, the shorter the wave. And again, a quarter of that wavelength needs to be in place to kind of
Well,
absorb
let's
that.
look at some STC or sound transmission coefficients. So let me share this cool little document. Boom. So this is some STCs or sound transmission coefficients of some different materials. And it gives you some like examples of what STC you would need to meet to make it so it's inaudible on the other side, or what level like loud speech would be barely audible. So it gives you like plus of how much you're adding for what you've got. So I did 3/4 inch OSB, so it's not even listed here, but let's say it's +6. Okay. So then I double stacked it. Then I added green glue. It's on resilient channel and it's on clips. So I'm just trying to reduce as much as possible. And then I added insulation and a bunch of other stuff behind it. You just got to figure out what
So
materials.
look at the paragraph right above where it starts with a capital T, the second paragraph.
The sound transmission coefficient rating is based on performance with frequencies from 125 to 4,000 hertz, which is exactly what Jonathan was alluding to.
So
Like,
we're
this isn't
talking
going
about
to work for low frequency. It ain't going to, the wavelengths are too long. It ain't going to do anything. Now, if you reinforced with like bunch of R38 or something, like peak fluffy and made it really long, yeah, we're starting to get into territory where we can make some things happen with certain frequencies. But this is mainly to stop and contain high frequencies and stop them from leaking, and to stop, depending on how you build things, stop things from rattling and things of that nature. But gypsum isn't bad. Like you can see it's +3 and then OSB's 3/8 inches +3. It just depends on what you're trying to do. My main reason for going with OSB was because I'm mounting things to the OSB. And if I did gypsum or something, it would fall out. It just wouldn't be supportive. I'm just reading
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up on the comments as well.
comments. Undo that. Do you guys ever go to 2-channel shows in the UK? That's all we ever have. I'm going to Expona with Martin Logan. So I went to Expona last year. Jonathan evidently doesn't listen to 2-channel. It's too good for it.
No, it's just been outdated, man. I really feel like Dolby Atmos and upgraded, like mixed audio is it. I just like it so much better.
Absolutely. Like a really good Dolby Atmos mix, phenomenal. But there's a lot of good 2-channel music. So it's just, I listen to them both. What I should have said is I use my room primarily for music. Let me readdress that. So I do a substantial amount of surround music, I'll say, but I do a substantial amount of 2-channel. Jonathan's just too good for it.
I know. I just think it's outdated. I mean, it is
Outdated.
It's clearly outdated.
Paul asks, have you heard Theory Audio soundbars and speakers? Thoughts? Jonathan, you've ever heard them?
No. Theory Audio. Man, these guys tonight are coming up with some stuff. Theory Audio.
So they're a same company as Pro Audio, if I remember correctly, I think.
Theory Audio high output soundbars.
They big boy soundbars.
Gene DeSalis reviewed them.
I just think if you're going that level for a soundbar, you might as well go with speakers.
Mark Henniger of AVS Forum says this is the new king of soundbars, bar none. Fact. I like Mark, and I, generally agree with what Gene says too. But also keep in mind those guys, do respond to ad revenue to some degree. So I have to keep that in mind.
But how much is that soundbar? Do I even want to know?
What in the heck? This thing says 117 dB per channel from a soundbar.
There's no way.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
With a sound sensitivity of 94 dB? No, that's not happening.
So
how much power? The power you would need in that soundbar would be insane.
It has 6 5-inch drivers and 3 1 1/4-inch drivers.
No. Are they horns?
It says that the 1.4-inch are compression drivers.
Oh,
so
okay.
Maybe.
Theory says power is 200 watts per channel.
Though I don't think those 6 5-inch are keeping up with that, but maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, hold on. Let's start with 94 dB with 200 watts. Are you getting to 117? Because I don't think so. Because you've got 94 at 1, 97 at 2, 100 at
4.
And then this is at 1. This is, well, okay, maybe.
103 at 8, 106 at 16.
109 at 32, 112 at 64, 115 at 128.
And now you're over their power rating.
You're
getting close to that. So maybe.
I mean, with room reinforcement and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard them. Ultimately, both Gene and Mark are well-known, reputable people, and it's right there on their homepage that they both said that they're pretty nice equipment. So,
all right,
check out those guys' reviews, I guess, on it and see what you think.
I stand corrected.
Me too. We initially were like, soundbar 117. No.
But the 5.2 system, which is The soundbar, 2 speakers, and 2 subs is $13,000.
What?
Yeah.
$13,000 for a soundbar?
With
I'm
two,
out.
with 2 additional speakers and 2 subs.
I'm out.
$13,000. Go buy some speakers, man. I mean, this thing's enormous. It's not small.
Was it 72 inches wide or something? I think I already closed the window.
I don't even know how much this thing weighs. It
7.
fits. Well, it's not that big. It fits perfectly under a 75-inch TV.
No, 75 would be diagonal, so it wouldn't even be 75 wide.
Yeah. I didn't say it was 75 wide. I said it fits nicely under a 75-inch TV. And it weighs 68 pounds. How are you going to mount that? Can you imagine trying to mount that on your... I guess you wall mount it. Does it give dimensions? It's 66 inches wide. So maybe not too big, but $13,000.
Too much.
That's a big soundbar. Very expensive soundbar. But to each their own. Fair enough. Paul now asks thoughts on Ascendo 6 and using 13 of them in a 714. So the Ascendo 6 are great speakers. The things that you need to consider about the Ascendo 5 and the Ascendo 6 is they are not compression drivers. They will not hit reference. They're not designed to. So if you want to have the big boy output, you got to at least go to the 10. They are releasing a new 6 with an all aluminum brush front and a different woofer driver. So be on the lookout for that. They are very good. You just need to evaluate what type of volume level are you trying to hit, right? Are you trying to get to reference level? If you are, at minimum, the 10, and then we need to start considering how big the room is, what your throw distance is, all that kind of stuff to figure out if that speaker is going to be able to do it with its output. The other things to consider are where you want your crossover point to be, because with the smaller drivers, the higher your crossover is going to be. The larger the driver is in the Ascendo line, the lower the crossover is. That's one of the big trade-offs there. Just things to think about. Excellent speaker. I've installed quite a few of them. I actually had a job last Sunday where we did an entire theater of the 5, and it sounded fantastic. It's just they didn't want reference. They wanted something small that went in wall, and it fit the bill for them. So, Paul, if you got any more questions, shoot me an email. Ryan@ascendav.net, and we can talk further. But got to think about what you're trying to use them for. You got anything else on that, Jonathan?
I've never heard of the Ascendos at all, period, any of them, so I don't know.
You wouldn't like them. Just kidding.
I'm about to hear it. Give me a few months when Ryan's room is done.
He's probably going to be like, "Why you should have just bought the Theory soundbar."
And an Epson.
It would have been way better than this.
Oh, that's funny.
50-inch subwoofer. No, you just need the Theory soundbar. And it's
Randy says we missed a super chat. What did we miss?
I did. Oh, I did. Man, I don't know how Michael.
I didn't see it. Well, I still don't see it.
I got it. Christian Consici, $10. Thank you very much, my man. Why hasn't projector technology progressed significantly the way TVs did? Why don't we have 1,000-nit OLED level contrast projectors? I ask this because TVs are getting larger. Also, Ryan, I sent you an email. Okay, I will check for the email after the stream. Why don't we, Jonathan?
I asked this very question on AVS forum the other day because I feel like projector technology is like mired down for 10 years. It's barely making any advancements. We talked about this with the podcast a couple weeks ago with Michael, in the sense that, like, granted one clip, but in our January projector shootout, the RS420 from JVC bested on one clip the NZ8 from JVC, and that is almost a decade difference between two projectors. So it didn't best it on all the clips, but one clip it did. caveats apply, whatever. At any rate, that just kind of shows you that these dang things are closer than they should be at that much time. And TVs have shot off to the races with OLED, and projectors haven't really kept up. I asked on the forum, why? Why are we not seeing, if we, I think basically because their reflected light off the screen messes up the contrast ratio. We will never see OLED type performance on a projected image. You can't, because the brightest parts of the image will wash off just reflected light onto the blacker areas of the image. So you won't get perfect infinity contrast ratios.
No, but
However,
the eclipse is really good.
However, we can get brighter, and that's really my question. Okay, so we're at the limits of the LCS darkness, we're at the limits of LCD darkness, DLP darkness, fine. Why don't we raise the brightness? Why are we stuck at 3,000 lumens for all the consumer models until you get to boutique stuff like Barco or Christie or something? Like,
So remember when you went over to Kevin's and you looked at that 98-inch OLED
yes,
and you're like, this is way too bright?
yes,
I think it's very related to that, because when you get an enormous surface area and you have 100% coverage, like of white, and then you go to like 500 nits, you'll be like, oh my God, my eyes. And you
here's
won't
my
be able to
rebuttal.
see.
If the projector, if the Epson's 2,700 lumens, if the
Yeah.
projector was twice as bright, I could probably leave the lights on in my room and watch it. And I
Oh,
have a
you're
laser
not
level
looking like
percentage.
insane amount. You're just trying to
Yeah,
get
I mean,
more.
give me more. And then instead of running my projector at 90% for my daily use, I can run it at 70% or 60% because it has 5,000 lumens instead of 3,000.
Yeah,
Why
I
are we stuck
agree.
at 3,000 lumens? That's my question here.
I don't know.
And the answer that was given back on the forum is because consumers are not demanding more. It's a niche product in a niche space. R&D takes extra money, and that was the feedback that was given.
I
Like, there's
think
just not.
Ryan has a really good point here. Is it's the size of the intended audience, right? The intended audience for a projector is a lot smaller than what we see for TVs. And then if you put that into scale, you can get these technologies, right, that are historically very expensive if you build onesie twosies of them. I mean, look how expensive big TVs used to be. And now they've come down, but they're selling more of them. So it's all in scale. So if we had the same thing, I think, with projectors and more people bought them, everything would get cheaper, and thereby you could potentially increase, like bring in a lot of what like Christie and Barco and stuff are doing into the cheaper models with higher light output, and we may be able to have that. But the other thing to consider is, remember that when we start throwing this light, right? Like look at the Griffin that I'm getting. It's 35,000 lumens, which is insane. But look at the heat output that we just talked about, and we all agree that that was insane. So
Yes,
now try and shove that into somebody's
can't.
normal room. It
You
wouldn't
can't.
work.
Right.
So even when you start, like, let's say you double the light output of, and this is all theoretical. I have no idea. I'm not smart enough to know this. But let's say you take your 3,000 nit projector or lumen projector and we double it. Well, theoretically, haven't you also doubled the heat output potentially?
You have raised the heat output.
They're already heat generators. And if you think about closed in spaces with these projectors in them, I mean, the room already gets warm a lot of times. You throw
But let
bodies
the
in there.
user decide on that. That's
I guess,
that's my
yeah.
decision. I mean, like, if it's too hot, I'll lower the brightness.
Yeah. I don't really know. I'm just
The
throwing darts.
the counter to that, the logical counter would be that, like, you got more heat, you had to have a bigger chassis to keep the LCD screens or LCOS screens cool. You got to have more fans. It makes more noise. Like, there's those kind of counters that you could argue. But the business class projectors have 5,000 lumen projectors. Move that into the home theater projectors.
Yeah, but they look like butt.
Yes, move those into the home theater projectors. That's what I'm saying. They don't have good motion chips. They don't have good, like, black levels to start. Like, but so what? Make my Epson LS 12,000, make the chassis a third larger, give me 5,000 lumens, raise the price a little bit if you want. Same black levels, just make it brighter. And the subjective contrast that we talked about before, where because something's brighter, our eyes can't see that something's not as dark, like, that can all kind of work in its favor.
Okay. So what would be acceptable contrast for something that, say, delivered 8,000 lumens?
That's a good question.
What would you say would 5,001 contrast be acceptable?
You talking about full on off?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Christie has one that's coming that'll do that.
Talk to me.
So there is.
But I can't afford a house.
No. It's MSRP is under $13,000. It's still expensive, but you're getting into like NZ7
JVC
launch
territory.
territory,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it's 5,000 to 1 native on-off contrast, and then I think it's 8,500 lumens and then 7,500 ANSI lumens, I think is what it
That's
is.
actually really exciting. That sounds like fantastic specs.
It will be an M-Wave.
That's really cool, actually.
Mhm.
That's the kind of advancement that I feel like we've been missing, man.
Mhm.
Like that's where it needs to go.
I heard that from my distributor and I was like, that's a big deal. Like
It
that
is a big
that
deal.
answers a lot of people's questions. And yeah, it doesn't have the on-off contrast that a lot of people expect and have gotten used to, like with the JVCs of 20 to 30,001. But like if we go back to the test that we did in 2022 with the projector comparison, a lot of the content, it didn't matter. The ANSI contrast, even if the ANSI contrast was better on a unit, you had to look for it in a lot of particular situations. Like when we were talking about what was that Marvel movie with all the bright colors and the fight scenes? Shun Li or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking. I
I
know
don't
what you're talking
remember
about.
what
I
that was
don't
titled.
I've never seen it.
But that was
Just the
I
demo.
couldn't really tell the difference except in the brightness of the projector. It was only when you got into the super dark stuff that it made a difference. And I really think that it only made a difference because we're doing direct A/B comparisons, right? At some point, and this is what I tell a lot of my customers, is you've got to figure out how much and how far you want to chase the rabbit, because what is good enough is typically good enough until you put something that's superior right next to it. But how often are people doing that in their own homes? Like, how often am I going, well, babe, I'm off to Best Buy to go buy a projector so I can see how much mine sucks? I mean, nobody's doing that. They're buying what they think is effective and then they're enjoying it. So to me, I'm really excited about this because I think 5,001
That's where my Epson sits,
7,500
basically. Yeah, I mean
lumens,
that's you
that's a
get
lot.
that many more lumens, it's going to look fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a real product, that's going to look. Ryan Kramer, speaking of, this is the projector for you. You're asking what to buy. If that's legit, coming out at M-Wave, it's available
It'll be at
consumers this
M-Wave.
summer, or this is like a pre.
No, it's out now, but it'll be at M-Wave.
Do you remember what the model's called?
It's the hold on.
Oh, this is what Ryan's been asking for. Ryan Kramer. There.
So I learned all of this when I became a Christie dealer. And Ryan, I should have thought about you when I saw it.
Every week you represent a new company.
I am done. I mean, Christie was kind of the end goal that I wanted to get to with projection, and that's where we went. Where is it? It's the 860A. Am I in the right price list? Yes. 860A. So it's the 4K 860A-IS.
They got to work on their naming scheme.
Yeah, well, they primarily function in the commercial space, so you get what you get. But it has a lens already on it. It weighs 33 pounds. It's a single chip DLP, and I think it's true 4K, but it does 8,500 ISO lumens and like 7,200 or 7,500 ANSI lumens. And it's got a fixed lens. You don't have to buy a lens for it. It comes with it. So, Dwayne,
that's exciting. I'm really looking forward to that. Like, truly, that is cool. That is cool news.
One of the guys who does a lot of the calibrations for Atlanta Home Theater just calibrated one. So I'm anxious to hear what his calibrations were, what his numbers were for like ANSI contrast, on-off contrast, and sharpen, what it looked like, and what he was actually able to get from measurements. So hopefully I'll have more information in the next
Are you
week
going
or
to
two.
find out it's got rainbow from hell? You know, like it's like all these nice features, but
it's actually a souped up LG. Oh man, never again. LG, I love LG. LG makes phenomenal TVs and stuff. That projector, maybe I just got a bad one. Just
no,
not
bad.
my thing. Just bad.
Just bad. We've seen other people post the same sort of stuff we did.
Just bad. All right.
I'm trying to catch up here. We got a lot of them starred, but there's still more comments rolling in, of course.
So, Nicholas, I think that's the 860. Look at the 860A. It's a different projector. Let me make sure. Maybe I'm smoking something. 4K 860A. I swear, was looking at this earlier. The first one that comes up is the 4K 860-IS, and that is not it. It's the A variant, which is
Uh-oh, this is
different.
this is not
That's
good.
what I'm just talking about. I think it's because there's multiple things in the spec. There's the 860-IS, and then there's the 860A. But if it's 1,300 to 1, I'm not hugely excited about it, but I swear it's 5,000 to 1. Hopefully I'm not blowing smoke. Pimped out BenQ.
It's a rebrand from Christie B&Q. Wah wah.
We'll see. It'll be at M-Wave, and you guys can make all your determinations. It'll be there.
That's gonna blow away everything else, man.
I hope so.
It'll be way brighter than anything else besides the crazy expensive stuff.
I think the Griffin's going to be there. Well,
You
no.
do a side by side with it at full brightness, it's gonna just make the other one's black levels look like crap because it's gonna have so much reflected light in the room, and so it's just gonna bring all the attention to itself. That's hard to do an AB with when it's that much brighter.
I'll have the Griffin, and then I think the other one that's going to be there is the M4K15, which is their 4K E-shifter that is actually really good. I saw it at Atlanta Home Theater, and it looks really good. I really like that one.
Now you got Nick excited. New toys to play with.
New toys, baby. New toys. So it's nice to see companies like Christie trying to do things in a different price bracket, and I think the industry is just going to benefit from it, hopefully. And theoretically, if this one doesn't deliver everything, hopefully it's a learning experience, and they can bring some more goodness from the big boys and bring it down into the little guys. Okay. Carrying on before we get lost in the projectors again. Waiting on.
That guy got a lot of mileage out of a super chat, didn't he?
He did. That was a big conversation. Miguel Munoz. M-U-N-O-Z. That's where we're settling. Waiting for my SI24 with GSG behind the screen. How to integrate them with two THX 10-inch.
You don't. You get rid of those 10-inch subs. Sorry, man.
Don't.
Those 10-inch cannot keep up.
That's
not
like
even as near field.
That's like trying to take race tires and incorporating them into a
how do I keep my spare tire?
Wagon wheel.
These new Z-rated performance summer tires. How do I keep my spare tire in place? You don't.
You don't.
You get rid of it.
The 24 is going to annihilate those things, and the 10s will do nothing but
bring it down.
Problems for the frequency response.
Yeah.
And
truly, we're not just being like mean about it. Just it's time to sell those things. Move on.
They're not even big enough really to use as near fields.
Nope, they're
not. The driver's not big enough to get through the. Yeah.
You could use them. You could potentially use them if you take the driver out and do a direct attach. That's plenty big for that. I'm serious.
I know you are, but this is where we've come, telling people to take their drivers out of the enclosures.
This is where he's gone, getting a 24-inch driver. And then, yeah, we didn't bring
that's true.
Pox on him.
What he actually should do is continue to use the 10s and direct attach the 24 to his chair.
Yeah.
No,
but that's getting crazy.
Really, it's time to get rid of the 10s.
I'll give you an example of this. So one of the guys here locally in Kansas City had an all Procella setup, and Procella sells some like helper 10-inch subs. He had the Procella P18, I think it was. It's been a lot of years, so if I don't get these model numbers right, don't crucify me. But I think it was a P18 and a P10, and the P18 was like a double 18, and he had a pair of those maybe, and he had two P10s on the side of his room, and at his house, he had it all professionally calibrated. This was in our early days of kind of the Kansas City group getting together. I said, let's play some like pulse. It's a clip with a server room where the bass is pulsing, like a sine wave pulsing up and down. We turned up the volume, and those little 10-inch, they didn't like keeping up, man. They were trying, and they didn't like it. And even the 18s failed at some point, but the 10s brought down the whole picture because they failed first. So you're going to be even more than that. And that's like professionally designed, meant to work together subs from a name brand high-end dealer, Procella. You're just, those aren't in the same league.
Not worth it. Tiki Time, is there any info on the new Monolith products? They're having some good sales now. I have not used them, but Gene had a review on the new Monolith stuff, the amps. If
What's
that's
new Monolith products?
they've got smaller amps now, cheaper amps than
little
their
90-watt amp things.
I just know they're cheaper. I don't know any of the specs about them. Maybe.
I think he might be talking. I saw him. Maybe he's talking about the 7-channel 90-watt amp that's like on sale for $350 or something like that.
Yeah, that
stuff. My question is this, man: if you're gonna only get 90 watts, why don't you just use your AVR? Most of your AVRs are 90 watts already. Like, what are you really gaining here?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know
Unless
why
you got like a little. If you have a small room and you have a pre-pro that doesn't have built-in amplifiers, then sure, you know. But if you got like a modern AVR and it's a nice, not bottom of the line one, but a nice mid-tier above, just use the AVR amps at that wattage level.
There's so few cheap pros though. I don't know when that would be beneficial. I don't know. I wouldn't. It's not for me, but it doesn't mean it's not for somebody else.
They'll measure well. Monolith has good products. They measure well. There won't be anything wrong with it, but it also won't bring much to the table. So, you know, we talked about that 70% thing. If your AVR is putting out like 70 watts and you go from 70 to 90, you're getting like less than a dB more. And that's only at the top end. So as you crank it up to the very highest, you get one more click on the volume with that amplifier than the built-in amps. It's just not, there's nothing to sing about with that.
Well, and we don't know who they're made by. I mean, they're big.
Usually they're ATI.
I know, but I don't know if they're made by the same company. That's like saying that
I'm assuming because of past, but it doesn't mean it is. Correct.
The NZ3 is also made by JVC, but it's actually a rebadged BenQ.
BenQ.
So
like the Christie, like this new Christie rebadged BenQ. I love that comment.
That was
best
a good
comment of the night.
That was a good comment. Nick does bring up a good point, but it's technically a different model. So I guess we'll just have to see what shows up at and how it measures at M-Wave. He does bring up a good point, though. Not that it's a BenQ, but the on-off contrast. Mid-bass Maestro. Hi, Jonathan. What type of PA speaker were you using here before you upgraded to your line arrays?
Yeah, I mean, I had Mackie C200. You can web search those. They actually went up in price to the point where they're still a great speaker. I'm not saying otherwise, but I paid at the time I bought them, they were 200 retail, and I paid like 130 at a closeout from Adorama, which was stupid good price. They're really well built. I went to the do-it-yourself forum on AVS and kind of asked what to upgrade. They said for the component cost alone, it should have been like $200 for the do-it-yourself stuff. So I think they're 300-ish. They worked great. They're reference capable. Nice little options. And there's other things in that same ballpark. So like we talked about before, $200 to $300 can get you a reference capable speaker in the pro audio world. Another one to look at would be like a Behringer 215 HT, I think it is, or XL. I don't remember off the top of my head. Behringer 215 XL, I think. Let me just verify that. Huge thread on AVS forum. A lot of followers on that one. Cheap, inexpensive, high performance. Yeah, 215 XL. Ugly as sin, but high performance.
Randy asks, what about bad pixels on these huge TVs? Is that covered? Replaced after 6 months? Logistics of swapping the panel or the whole TV? I mean, Randy brings up, this goes back to when we were talking about projector versus TV. I mean, what happens if you get a bad pixel? I remember when I had a Vizio, we had to take the whole thing off the wall. The technician had to look at it, and it was just this huge pain in the butt. I mean, projectors is just ship it back to the manufacturer. They ship you a new one a lot of times, like JVC's advanced RMA or anything. So problems, what do you think? You willing to do with that?
I mean, it's not my problem. I just take it back to Best Buy. It's Best Buy's problem and the TV manufacturer's problem.
But I mean, like, if you've had it for like a year and a half and it's still under manufacturer warranty, you can't take it back to Best Buy.
Yeah, but it's still not your problem. Like, what are you going to drive it someplace? You just call the company and they have to take care of it, right?
Well, like what I said with my Vizio, they sent a repair guy out who he was just a local repair guy that was subcontracted by Vizio. And then they took it off the wall, opened the TV up, and did stuff.
Yeah, but you didn't do it. That's my point. You just make the phone call. Then you sit down and watch.
Just imagining you with like this future 200-inch TV, guys struggling to take it off the wall, and you're just sitting there with your
Take out my little
watch
GoPro
them.
and record the
Then
whole thing. This is going on
the
YouTube.
whole thing just goes it just falls on the guy,
Yeah.
and you don't even get up.
That's funny.
Got it. And then not my problem.
Hey, that's Michael said that's his most popular video is when they dropped that. What was it? That fancy shell speaker. It went viral because they dropped it or almost dropped it or something, wasn't it? Like a dangerous way of mounting. I'm trying to remember. Anyway,
Bad audio advice.
yeah, I have a TV falling on someone. Probably hit the big
$1 million
time.
idea. I'll be the guinea pig. Just drop the TV on me. Jeffrey asked, Jonathan, any more experimenting with the low profile subs as near fields on the back of the seats?
Yes, still continuing with that. I've tried a whole bunch of different drivers. I now have 2 8-inch MB quartz that I'm getting ready to mount inside the back chair. I've taken off the fabric on the seat. You can see it there. I'm getting ready to like industrial strength Velcro it inside to test before.
Does the fabric actually come off your chairs, or did you cut it?
It was all stapled on, so I unstapled it.
Oh,
well, I'm not talking about the leather part. There's like a fabric cover underneath. So there's the flap that comes down. Underneath that is like black felt fabric, basically. That's the part that I undid. I would show you. It'd be nice to show you guys, but I can't really get the camera over there and do this. It's all too short wires. Any rate, the bottom of it's open. I slid in 2 8s. That's as big as it will slide in there. I thought a 10 would work. It won't. 2 8s. I'm going to try that and see how it works.
Okay.
We'll see. I'll report back next week. I'm in experimental mode, man. I got to get this figured out with these seats. Still playing all the time. My wife's like, why is the theater constantly torn apart? Look at my chairs. They got no backs on them. She's like wanting to watch a movie the other night. She's like, we can't even use the theater because it's constantly torn up.
And you would just been like, yeah, we can. Whole nother row.
Back row is still good.
You should. I would have just said, yeah, I sold them. I sold the backs of the chairs. They're now stools.
To buy another subwoofer.
Or you would have said, yeah, I'm waiting for the 24-inch to come in so we can use them as backs.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to lean right into the cone of the subwoofer.
You know, I ordered a bunch of full Martys from GSG. That's going to be the rear. And then you get like ambient port air for your feet.
Oh, man.
Mid-Bass Meister asked, does anyone use DTS upmix?
Nope.
No.
I use it if I have a DTS track, but that's so uncommon anymore. Like everything in the modern world is Dolby Atmos, it seems like.
There's a lot of DTS stuff. There's more than you think, but there's way more Dolby.
I mean, just happenstance, I don't seem to come across any DTS stuff. Happenstance. Like I'm not seeking it out or avoiding it. Just my daily stuff. I'm sure there's stuff out there. I'm just saying I don't run across it.
I'm looking. I know there's lists.
My receiver is set to automatically switch to the native codec, and then it upmixes to whatever that native codec is. And I just don't ever see it flash DTS.
Is there anything really new? All of the Bourne movies.
I watched those 15 years ago.
I know. I just said, is there anything new? Like, not that the Bourne ones. All the 50 Shades of Grey.
I don't watch that kind of stuff.
No. All the Harry Potters.
Not in the original. Were they? The remake are supposed to be some of the best content on disc with the DTS-X.
But the remake?
The 4K HDR version.
The DTS-X, the remake is supposed to be some of the best.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I've heard that. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard.
Isn't How to Train Your Dragon 2 one of your favorite demos?
Yeah, but that's Atmos. The one I have is Atmos.
I
have
4K is DTS-X.
Well, my version that I show you guys is Atmos.
Why would they do that? Why would they change? Jurassic Park?
Someone slipping money under the table?
All the Jurassic Parks?
That's true. I think those have always been DTS.
Those are really good.
The very first one.
Especially the remaster of the first one. It's amazing. I think when done right, I prefer DTS over Dolby, typically. Because all of these movies, a lot of these are like a lot of my favorite movies ever.
So wait a minute. We know from the DVD days that DTS mixed the bass 3 dB hotter than Dolby Atmos.
Maybe
But
that's
otherwise, it's just a container, like a zip container, a different style of container. Now, I think people have said the up mixer runs the ceiling channels hotter than the Dolby surround up mixer, like DTS Neural X runs the ceiling channels hotter with its up mixing. So you might prefer that too. I don't know what the realm of modern stuff is with object-based audio, if there's any other differences other than just the up mixers. But in the old days, everyone preferred DTS because it had hotter bass. They were tricky that way. And that's why it worked.
yeah, and maybe I'm just talking out of my butt.
No, I don't think that's wrong. I think people 3 dB hotter bass, you'll like it. That's just the way it is. So everybody, including myself, before we knew this stuff, we liked DTS better because it ran the bass hotter.
Fair. I like me some bass.
I do too. Surprise, everybody, we like bass.
Surprise. That got that. Edie, can I run 4 subs with only 2 sub outs from a receiver, positives and negatives in doing so?
Yes.
Failure to elaborate further.
You'd want to stack them or have them close, equal distance even, so you could run your front 2 left and right, equal distance from your main listening position, and your wherever your other ones are, your near field or rear or whatever in the room, equal distance from the listening position. That's the key. If you're running 2 subs off 1 output, you want them equidistant. Then that's how you play that game. Works great.
It's not ideal if they're in different locations in the room, though.
Not if they're different distances.
Yeah,
That
but even
doesn't
if they're not different distances, room modes and all kinds of other stuff could be problematic, potentially.
Works
Maybe.
fine. Works fine. My
Maybe.
opinion. Different opinion here is that's probably okay, but
To do it what most people do, mini DSP. And just run it off 1 sub out and then configure them all independently. More flexible. And then you can do multi-sub optimization and then feed that into your room EQ. And
so a lot of people will stack. I mean, this very thing is like this. I have my entire left stack of 4 off 1 sub out.
I'm not doubting the stacking. The stacking works fine. I'm saying if you didn't put them like, if I put 2 in the front in each corner and then 2 in the rear in each corner.
I think as long as it's equal distance from main listening position, you're in good shape. In fact, Mark Seaton, going back to his name again, he told us years ago when we were still budding in this hobby that in his experience, measuring different rooms as a calibrator and installer, using a single subwoofer out instead of 2 on the receivers at that time, the fancy smancy thing was having 2 outputs instead of 1 that were individually configurable. This is 2011 timeframe. He came to one of our meets. He was helping us set it up. He was talking tech talk way ahead of us at that point. Said in his experience, a single subwoofer out was working better for in-room measurements than 2. So he cautioned us to at least double check everything before we assumed it was not that way.
I'm not saying that it's going to be. I'm simply saying that you have more flexibility and the ability to counteract potential problems.
But they at equal distance, assuming your room is basically the same and you're setting the gains the same and so forth, they'll resolve the same to the mic because of the distance. So if they're truly equal distance, the mic will pick them up as a single one if you do it right. And then those different modes and nulls from the room with the boundary interactions will sum together and be less. So there's less EQ for the processor to do all that kind of stuff.
Fair. Ryan and John, will a 200 watt per channel multi-channel amp be better than a 150?
About 1 dB better. Seriously, not very much difference. You double the power, you get 3 dB. So we're talking 150 watts to 300 watts gets you 3 dBs. And what people fail to realize is that's 3 dB on top of what the other one can't do. So it's not just always louder. That's what your gain structure is for. They should be the exact same volume between 150 and 200 watt if it's set up properly. It's just the 200 watt has 1 dB extra headroom at the top. So if you can go to level 79 on your volume using a simple term, with the 150 watt, you can go to level 80 with the 200 watt. It's not very much difference. Not even noticeable difference.
1 dB.
Right. Which is why the whole retail channel with AVRs saying like, oh, you got the top end one, you get an extra 10 watts is an absolute joke because you're getting like a 1/10 of a dB difference with that stuff. It's just nonsense.
That 1/10 of a dB makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Not even perceivable.
Correct.
Paul, what do you need to be able to easily switch between different sets of speakers to quickly do demos?
This is your Huckleberry.
I'm going to be the Finn to this Huckleberry. You need a speaker switch, and it depends on how you want to do this because there's a lot of variables that really need to be accounted for in this. You need, I guess it depends on how objective. So how we did it at M-Wave is I used the Storm pre-pro, preset, and went through and did all of the volume matching, the SPL matching, set that into the Storm and was able to change channels through everything while we were rotating speakers. I also put pass filters on to cut out all of the low frequency because we've found that we as people will almost unanimously prefer the speaker that can get the lowest. We like bass, right? So if you don't account for that, you're just going to pick the one that's typically able to get the lowest almost all the time. So you can do it that way, or you can do it the easier way and just buy a speaker switch. My recommendation would be to find one that has a attenuation knob so that you can manage the SPL, but then you're theoretically introducing attenuators into the chain. And if you're trying to make this as pure as possible, you want to eliminate as many of those variables as you can. Would you hear the difference? I don't know, but it's sometimes a necessary evil in order to make things easier. We just did it with the Storm at M-Wave to try and make it as objective as possible. And it was digital, so it was easy to switch and do all the SPL management and pass filters and stuff. So that's how I would do it, and that's how we've done it. And then if you want to take it a step further, you put them all on a Lazy Susan or carts so that they all play in the exact same position so that you can remove all of the room variables for gain or nulls or any of that. Because if they're in the same position, shouldn't really have any differentiation between any of those. So again, how far do you want to chase the rabbit?
And I will also put out there that you can do on modern Denon and Marantz and maybe other companies. That's just the one I'm familiar with. They have a speaker A and a speaker B preset, and this happened in the last 2 generations. You can do different amp assigns, and you can have like a 2-channel on speaker set A and a different left and right on speaker channel B that's meant to go with the home theater. So you can do that kind of stuff too. You can have 2 different amp assigns. How many different systems you could have? I think if you wanted to work it out, you might be able to do 2 5.1 systems between speaker A and speaker B potentially on those new like 11-channel Marantzes, because that would have that much capability, I think. So another alternative with a single box, single AVR or per processor. All right, we got to start winding down as far as taking new questions because
I'm not
taking my daughter from a dance here soon.
In this day and age, does the LFE output on a surround processor handle 2-channel differently than one from a subtrack from a Blu-ray using an Anthem AVM60?
LFE output on a surround processor than a subtrack from a Blu-ray. LFE is really a dedicated 0.1 channel. What you're getting on a like 2-channel music when it routes to the sub is the crossover down, and there's no LFE track. There's no LFE. LFE is a 0.1 mix intentionally designed on like a Dolby Digital DTS, any of the modern codecs. And that's specifically sub-channel information that may differ from what the speakers get from the crossover point down. It may be completely independent, and it will route to the subwoofer. So you're getting both crossover and LFE on a digital track, Dolby Digital, DTS, all the newer codecs. And on stereo, it's just crossover down, no LFE.
Yep. Little food for thought, though. I do actually prefer a increase in low end for my 2-channel as opposed to movies. More than likely because the 2-channel doesn't have the LFE. Just a few left. Carl, what's a simple way to calculate a subwoofer enclosure dimension? Needs to reach around 20 hertz. I'm dipping my toes in a DIY in some Stereo Integrity HT18 V3. There are all kinds of calculators for this, but Jonathan is going to have probably more of a...
WinISD is an old goodie that you can look up. It's not super intuitive to run. You'll have to put in your driver parameters, and then it'll kind of give you a recommendation, like a generic recommendation. You have to check the port velocity, all this stuff. There's little idiosyncrasies in there that are not necessarily intuitive. There's numbers that won't mean anything to you. So what you need to do is go to like AVS forum, go to the do-it-yourself community, make a post. Here's the driver I have. Here's the size box I can deal with. Here's the driver parameters. All these drivers, like that 18V3, will have the driver specs as published by SI. You'll plug that in there, and they can kind of help you make sure you're not doing something wrong. Like you could build a box with one IST that would work great and have the port be too small. And so when it gets up to volume, you start hearing wind noise and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of little nuances to this. I don't know of a plug and play calculator personally. You have to know what all the numbers mean. And so, you'll want to seek some help of some experts, and it's probably more in depth than we want to get to on this. I've played with that in the past. It's been years. And even I'm not that I'm some sort of expert or anything, but I still went to the do-it-yourself forum and was asking questions. You'll find some of my threads in there, I'm sure.
Crowdsource.
Yeah, there's a lot of great knowledge on that forum, and they're willing to help. I mean, that's what they're there for. They really enjoy it, just like Ryan and I do. They're more on that end. Like I design sub boxes. That's my hobby. I enjoy it. I love it. I want to help people. It's that kind of person that's out there doing that can help you with that. Make sure it's accurate.
Super chat, Saul M. Thanks for the $5. Going back to 4 subs calibration, front stack, 2 subs out, running YPOW with 1 sub only. Yamaha Avantage R6 A6A. Going back to 4 subs calibration, front stacked, 2 subs out, running YPOW with only 1. I don't understand.
Yeah, Saul, you might have to. Thanks for the super chat first, but you might have to give us a little bit more information.
We went from 4 subs to 2 subs to 1 sub. I don't I don't know what's going on. Saul, can you clarify? You got to be still here because you just dropped that super chat.
Have you had much experience with YPIO recently? My last experience with it was 2014.
Not recently.
I don't know if it's changed since then or not.
Not recently.
I liked it back then. It did well in our little shootout.
I think they all do well. I mean, we found that through our comparisons. They all are far less different than we think they are. At least in round mixes.
I think that's more modern, that they're doing more similar, and maybe in that huge room. Because in my room in 2014, granted 10 years ago now.
10 years ago.
Not
Good
similar.
Lord, that's that long ago. Drew Arendando, have you guys done any experimenting with Dirac art? Yes. We answered the question.
Yeah, we can answer it more, but we've already talked about this in another video. I don't remember this 3 weeks ago, maybe. Is that right? 4 weeks ago?
We talked about it a few times. It excels. This is really we just talked about it on this video with Sheldon. It excels at certain things, like you talked about with Ghost of Johnny Cash, that track. You really liked it. You really liked Dirac. And then on the next track, you're like, I like it better with it off. So I think it does have some improvement. And for people that aren't manually EQing, right? For people that aren't jumping in and trying to drown themselves in this space, it does a really good job. Does it get everything right? Absolutely not, because it's making assumptions. It's doing the best that it can. And that's what I think people forget about these room EQ tools is they're going to get things wrong. Like if you do one calibration with Dirac, and this goes for Odyssey, it goes for Arc, it goes for all of them. If you do one calibration and then you put the mic in the exact same positions and do it again, you're probably going to get 2 different results. So sometimes they're better than others. It depends on what it's seeing and what it's doing. So I like it sometimes and I don't like it in other times, mainly in the low frequency. You got anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, in one different room, really, with a sizable amount of time in here, it cleaned up the bass response above a certain frequency, but it messed it up below. You remember looking at those response graphs where we were looking at the waterfall decay charts? Like below a certain frequency, 20 or 30 hertz, it was worse, and above it, it was better. Like above 30 hertz, it was better.
But you also said that above it, you didn't necessarily like it.
Because and I don't know if this is good or bad. It's kind of this whole thing where, like, do I like inaccurate bass? Because it took away some of the tactile feel.
Yes.
You know, the clothes flapping, the little hair motion feel, like it took some of that away, probably because it was cleaning up some resonances in the room above 30 hertz, but it removed some of the tactileness. And below 30 hertz, it was like worse on the
But
graph.
then you also said today that you didn't like a lot of the tactileness. It was too much.
And that's different. This isn't with Dirac Art at all.
Excuse me.
Keep up. Keep up.
Keep up. So I guess in a long story short, it's good at some things, and it's not good at some things.
And I don't know how translatable my experience in my room with your processor is to the next room. Although you have said, I think in the deepest space, you think they still have some work to do potentially there.
Absolutely. But the companies recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
Companies recognize that. Let's go back to Saul. Saul says, and this is a restate of his question, I have 4 subs stacked up front. Y split on each sub outputs of the receiver. Okay, so he's got 2 sub outs into Y splitters for 4 subs. When running YPOW calibration, do I leave them all on when running? Yes.
Yes.
If they're stacked, as long as you have a splitter going to one stack and another splitter going to another stack, you leave them on.
Yes.
Yeah. Good question, though, because I think that confuses a lot of people. But when they're stacked like that, they're effectively going to act as one sub. They're going to sum together and they're going to act as one sub because they're so close together. The timing is going to be virtually identical. So to the room EQ, they're going to be the same. Real quick, since we're on the topic of subs, Danny R asks, Jonathan, what kind of subs do you have?
They're do-it-yourself. They are Dayton Audio Ultimax UM1822. UM1822.
They're okay. They're okay. The bass in Jonathan's room is meh. Jonathan has some of the best bass when he's not ripping his room apart that I've ever had. Jonathan is one of the best rooms I've ever experienced. I know I get grief for the comment I made a couple months ago, but you have one of the best rooms I've ever experienced, given what you've done and the time you've put into it and the equipment you're using. And yeah, it's one of my favorite to recommend for people to go hear.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah. Well worth it.
I'll pay you later.
Oh, just make sure you get it right this time. Okay?
You left off with the zeros last time.
Johnny E. Question. What's up, Ryan and Jonathan? Ascendo 12 passive speaker. Thinking about getting those for my LCRs. The Emotiva DR3 XPA amp. Will that amp be enough? Power, 450 watts, all channels driving. It depends on.
Yes. Heck yes. There's no question here. Ascendo 12. Isn't that something like super high sensitivity, right? Is that one of the drivers like you're talking about?
They vary a little bit. Hold on.
Your surround?
Hold on. Mine's the beryllium version.
Is this a single coax? I guess is my question.
It's a coax. Yes.
450 watts?
Yes.
Do you want your ears bleeding all the time or some of the time? Yes.
It's going to be very loud. That'll be a lot. Let me, while I'm looking at them, let me look them up. Ascendo speakers. Let's see. Johnny, if you're still here, I'm assuming those are the normal ones, or are they the pros, or are they the berylliums? Speakers.
I mean, really, what is the sensitivity? You got it pulled up?
I'm getting there. Just it takes a second. And I was going to the website, and then I remembered I've got all of them in a folder. Loudspeakers. The 12 passive on wall. So this guy. No. Hold on. I'm getting there. There we go. Found it. It's only 98.
Only 1 watt, 98.
98.
So you're going to
Maximum-
resolve like 8 watts to get to reference at 1 meter. 450, that'll be great. You won't ever use a percentage of that. I mean, it will.
You won't ever hear again.
Plenty of power, man. Plenty of power.
Continuous max SPL is 123. So, no, you got plenty of power. Them big boy speakers. Eddie Magambo just picked up an Epson LS12000. I'm planning to do a 140 to 150 inch 16:9 screen. I was wondering if I could just mask the bottom of a screen as opposed to the top and bottom and use the rest of the area as scope.
Sure.
Yeah.
You just raise the saved memory position. Sure.
Yep. Your masking panel is just going to be bigger because you're combining the two. MadVR actually does a cool feature where it combines them for you. So you don't even have to change anything. It just combines the black bars and shifts the whole image up to where the top bar would be. And then if you have a single-sided masking solution, or like if your chairs come up and they block the bottom of the screen, you could just shift it. Food for thought. But yeah, as Jonathan said, you could just change your memory position and do one-sided masking. John Smith. Hey, Ryan, Jonathan, does 200 watts per channel better than we already did that one
already? Yeah.
And then PK Hamu 2005. What are your thoughts on Funk Harbottle subs? Why are they so expensive? Ryan, can we use infrasonic subs only with a Tronov and Storff processor?
I don't know much about Harbottle subs, but Funk is expensive because he has so much beautiful candy work in his cabinets. I mean, that's what he's known for, is those audiophile, glorious looking cabinets.
Yep.
And he uses premium drivers too. You can't buy a Funk subwoofer with like a mid-tier, bottom-tier driver. He uses only the highest level products in his driver selection. So naturally they're going to be expensive. Harbottle, I don't know very much about.
I don't either.
I think they're talked about a lot on the forum. I've never heard one yet. I couldn't give you much information on those.
As far as infrasonic subs, I am assuming what you mean is running different subs for different frequencies.
Infrasonic typically means below hearing, below 20 hertz.
Well, what I mean is like you're running certain subs for your upper bass, and then you're changing to infrasonic subs for your lower end. I don't think you can do that on a Denon. Can you?
No, not really.
Yeah, you're really going to be limited to Tronov and Storm, I think, for that. I don't think Anthem can do that.
You'd have to use an external processor like a mini DSP or something if you try to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that's even worthwhile.
We'll find out.
When I've heard that implemented in the past, I'm not sure I can tell the difference. But yeah, if you're doing that in your room, I guess we'll see.
We will see. I mean, the argument is if you're separating drivers in speakers, why not do the same thing for low frequency? Right? If you're using different drivers for tweeters, mids, and woofers.
Well, the counter argument would be you should have different style subwoofers if you're going to do it. So you have a big, thick, meaty surround, heavy moving mass subwoofer for the lower frequencies. Then you have a nice, quick pro audio paper waffle surround for immediate transients with less excursion capability, higher power handling for your higher frequencies in the subwoofer range. What doesn't make sense to me, and I'm talking out of turn here because I don't know how Ascend Audio is doing this. If they're doing it with all the same driver, then we'll just see how it unfolds. But what doesn't make sense to me is like the REL collection on AVS Forum, where they had 3 of the exact same driver and they're commanding only high frequencies here and low. That's the same driver.
Yeah.
Things made to cover the whole frequency range. What are you doing? My take.
We'll
see. We'll see.
We will all be able to experience it. And Jonathan will look at me and be like, so why didn't you get the Epson?
Soundbar, Theory Audio.
Why not? Paul asks, can you hear a better separation between flagship Denon and Storm and Tronov? No.
I'd say no, and I think that's objectively measurable on the test bench. ASR does those measurements with his $20,000 test rig, and those thresholds are like 80 dB difference. It's below the noise threshold of your room, and the products are not that different on the top end of the scale anyway. So you got 30, 40 dB of noise as your floor in your room, your noise floor. There's the channel separation is below the noise floor in your room is what I'm trying to say. So you're not going to hear it, even if it was there.
Nope. We'll do this at this is a simple one to do at M-Wave. I think it's a lot easier. I'll just do it on 2-channel. We can run different ones and be able to switch back and forth, and you're not going to be able to tell.
Now, here's where this changes. You add auto EQ to the mix, and things do change.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so that's why I think that's where that perception comes from, because people don't necessarily equate those two, like auto EQ on versus auto EQ off. The test results will be dramatically different.
Very different. Very different. Now, you may like the Denon over the Storm and Trinov, depending on how Odyssey or Dirac, whichever you're using on the Denon, performed. I mean, I don't know.
Or the bundled mics that we've talked about, or the boundary interactions.
Maybe you get
there's so many variables in that.
You get a unicorn bundled Odyssey mic, and it outperforms Storm and Trinov.
But as soon as you turn off EQ, Paul, this is the key. As soon as you turn off EQ and you level match everything, you're not hearing channel separation between the
Nope. You will not.
Separation differences, I should say.
Stitch asks, will there be a Kaleidoscape demo at M-Wave? Yes. Kaleidoscape is going to be in many rooms at M-Wave. Kaleidoscape was actually there last year. They had a table at M-Wave. So I think they'll be there this year. I think Adam's coming back. So you'll be able to ask all your Kaleidoscape questions, and they will be in many, many different rooms for you to be able to experience, because they're just an easy-to-use end-game source for demo theaters to be able to utilize.
So I have a question for you on this, and I don't want to put you on the spot. So if you don't know, just say you don't know. It's fine. On eBay, they have older Kaleidoscape things for really cheap. But Kaleidoscape reformed as a company at some point. Are those old ones even still good, or is that why they're so cheap because they don't function anymore? Do you know?
Which ones?
I don't know. Like Kaleidoscape players are like $300 on eBay in the used market, and they're not the modern. They're not the current lineup. Like they're white.
They should work.
I don't know how that unfolded between the old product and the new. Like, do they still support them? Are they still valid?
They should work.
See, that's interesting because the new ones are very expensive, as everyone knows. The old ones are so cheap. Why are they so cheap?
The old white ones, I don't think they're 4K. They have limited storage capacity. The
smaller drive, sure.
Yeah, the oldest modern one is the OG Strato. It's just called the Strato. And then they went to the Strato S, and then they went to the Terra and the Strato C, and then they went to the Strato C and Terra Prime. So the Terra Prime is current. And the differentiator between the Terra and the Terra Prime is download speed. So you've got 10 minutes to download a movie versus if you have 2.5 gigabit per second internet, 3 minutes. So that's the main differentiator there. The Strato C or the Strato S, I think, is like almost an hour to download a movie. And then the Strato, I think, is longer. Than the Strato is actually bigger. It's double the thickness of the Strato S. It's 2U instead of
1080p versus 4K is a pretty big deal. But aside from the resolution, is there significant differences in like processing or upscaling or anything like that would be on the modern one?
I don't think they're doing any upscaling or anything. Processing and like lag times and menus and things, yes. But outside of that, I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I would just happenstance was stumbling across that one day from somebody who had a bunch of stuff from a home theater sale, and I looked at the Kaleidoscape stuff. The old stuff's just going for nothing. I mean, compared to those are thousands of dollars type equipment, and they were going for hundreds of dollars. Old stuff.
Theoretically, they should still work. A lot of those, though, can be because Kaleidoscape originally started with like disc caddies and stuff. So you'd put discs in them and they would auto switch and do
some of those things were on eBay. Yeah, like 300 disc caddy.
Those are kind of a big part of they're worthless. I mean, most people aren't buying Kaleidoscape now or utilizing those to do that. Or like the Alto player, there's still some stuff value in the Altos, but they should theoretically still work. I know people still use them. I see deployments through MadVR when I'm on with text, and that people have racks of them with all of their disc collections and stuff, because once you have them and you have all those discs, why would you get rid of them as long as they still work? And I think you can still get parts and stuff for them because they still take them on trade-ins and things. So yeah, they still work. I think I don't have one, so I can't tell you for sure, but they should still work. Saul's got another super chat. Thanks for the $5 brother. Going back to 4 subs calibration front stacked.
We already did that one.
We already did that one. Okay. And then the last thing.
I still showed 9 starred. You only have one more?
I haven't unstarred them. I'm unstarring them now because I'm lazy. The last question, but it's more of a statement. You started this one, Jonathan.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right?
Sunkaran says no more Atmos on Amazon Prime. Is that true?
You got to pay for the upgraded ad-free tier.
What?
They did this a week ago, and it happened in Europe a year ago or something. But now it's here in the United States. So now there's ads on Atmos Prime, and if you don't pay it, you don't get Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos if you don't pay the upgraded fee. It's not a very big fee. What is it? $3 or $4 a month or something? It's not huge.
Yeah, but still.
It's because they spent all that money on the excellent Lord of the Rings series, man. How many millions of dollars did they spend on that? So they could charge us an extra $3 or $4 a month to make money again? $250. Crispy says it's only $250. That's not the end of the world.
So Saul asks another question. I'm bringing this up because it's super chat. Thanks for another $5. Is BEQ really a thing? Yes. Do Jonathan or I use it? No.
We've experienced it. I've experienced it. I don't think it's necessary personally.
No.
People stand by it. People really love it or hate it. I mean, like,
what? I'm actually going to lump everyone in that uses it as the same type of person as Sheldon.
Just really wants as much as they can have.
Yes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a subjective experience. I'm not talking down or anything. It's just, it's like Mark uses BEQ. Scott Newby, I think, doesn't he?
I don't know about Scott Newby. I mean, I don't know if he does or not.
Sheldon does.
Sheldon said he's kind of winding down from it, but he did historically for quite a while use it and really liked it.
Yeah. So it's absolutely a thing. And they actually got it's implemented on the Monoprice Pre-Pro.
Yes.
That it was only done because it was privately written and then it was implemented into the Pre-Pro. But yeah, it's absolutely a thing. And a lot of people use it. I just don't because I don't see the purpose personally. I never watch a really bass heavy movie and you go, you know what? This could use more bass. But you know what I can do if I want more bass? Turn it up.
Yeah, well, the diehards will say that you're only turning up the 30 to 40 hertz frequencies and not the lowest one, which is the whole point of BEQ. But you know this, just that it's raising, it's applying a filter to counteract the filter that the studios are applying to remove bass below 30 hertz to make it flat. But I think the danger is, and the experience I have is that it sort of makes bass just be drony because you're lifting up things that maybe shouldn't be there and giving it extra emphasis, and it ends up just being kind of a too much, in my opinion. And we're bass heads here. I'm a bass head here. Too much.
Oh, I'm even more of a bass head than Jonathan. Jonathan's been to my room when it was the 4000s.
Yeah.
It's too much.
To each their own, though. People like it. I'm not hating on them.
It's subjective. This entire hobby, this entire home theater, it's all about subjective experiences. We are the culmination of our life's experience. Everyone is going to like something different. No one is going to like the exact same thing the exact same way. Somebody's going to be like, well, I could use a little bit more here, a little bit more here. And it's going to be different to everybody. It's the same thing here. Everybody's going to have a subjective, quantitative amount that they want to be able to put in, and they should be able to do so. So just because Jonathan and I don't like it does not mean it's wrong. It just means that we don't like it personally, which means it's wrong.
Here's the illustration I'll give you, Saul, that puts a point on it. In the X-Men movie, when Magneto first puts on and showcases his little helmet and sticks it on his head, Sheldon used this as a demo at his house to kind of show what BEQ can do and how cool it is. He puts on his head and there's this low bass rumble that happens in the movie. And he's got the hover bosses and the hover easies and all that stuff going on. And everybody in the theater was doing this as he was putting his helmet on because there's a 5 hertz note in there. And that 5 hertz note is an undertone. It's supposed to be barely like You can sort of tactically feel it, like it gives you a nervousness. It's not meant to be bouncing around like a circus carnival. But because BEQ raised it up to the same level as like 30 hertz, everything in the room is going crazy, and it's giving all this activation to something that's supposed to give a little anxiousness to the scene. It's giving you like a carnival ride. It was ridiculous. So that's where my head's at. Like, do I think that the director, the producer, the sound designer wanted everyone in the theater to be bouncing around when he put his helmet on? No, I don't think that. You know, they wanted it
You
there.
would know because you don't like Godzilla or Pacific Rim. So how would you know?
All opinions discredited.
Stitch brought that one up. Oh, all right. This is where we call it because you got 5 minutes until you got to be out of here.
Yeah, go pick
So we didn't do this tomorrow because the Super Bowl's tomorrow. We thought nobody would want to watch us.
They didn't. Multiple people in the comments were like, "Where's Michael? Bring Michael back."
Well, obviously, Michael is better than both of us.
He is. I mean, that's the reason we're here. So yeah, sorry guys. We'll be back. He'll be back next week.
Yeah, he'll be back next week. Unfortunately, so will we. But can't do anything about that because Michael, for whatever reason, keeps us around. But that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. How long were we on? 2.5 hours. So it wasn't too short. Lots of questions. Hopefully, lots of answers. We'll see you next week. It's been a good show. Jonathan, good talking to you. We got to do Helldivers.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
It does, except my computer doesn't work. It's covered in dust from the theater. But hopefully I can get that cleaned up tomorrow. So anyway, guys, tonight was fun. Make sure you, if you haven't done already, hit like, subscribe. I know Michael appreciates it. Until next time, we'll see you guys next week. See you later.
Good night.